Hey guys, tonight we're going way back. Not like your grandma's house smells like mothballs back, but like 1,000 years ago back, straight into the icy heart of the Viking Age. And you're not watching from the sidelines. No, you're in it. You wake up with your breath fogging in the frozen air, face buried in a pile of damp moss, cold creeping down your spine like a rude squirrel. Welcome to 9th century Scandinavia. It's winter. It's freezing, and you, my friend, are wildly underdressed. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I bet it's warmer than here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint against the pale glow of a snow-blanketed landscape, the sun barely dragging itself above the jagged mountains. A distant crow calls like it's complaining about the same thing you are. What on Midgard's frozen earth are you doing out here? The snow crunches under your boots, but not in a satisfying way. It's the kind of crunch that says, yes, you're about to lose a toe to frostbite. You trudge toward the only thing that looks remotely survivable. A longhouse, its wooden frame hunched against the wind, smoke curling from a hole in the roof like it's exhaling a tired sigh. The air smells like burnt peat, wet fur, and something vaguely animal. As you reach the entrance, a curtain of rough-woven wool is pushed aside by a hand the size of your face. A man with a braided beard and dead serious eyes stares at you. He doesn't speak, just grunts and steps aside. Welcome party. 10:10. Inside it's dim. A long central hearth flickers with orange coals. The room stretches out around it, lined with raised wooden platforms along the walls. Those are beds, apparently. A couple of goats lie curled at the far end, steam rising from their bodies. There's warmth here, yes, but also funk, the combined perfume of unwashed humans, animals, damp wood, and whatever they're cooking in that hanging iron pot. You breathe it in like it's Chanel number. This is your new home. You're not a tourist. You're a guest, maybe even a temporary member of this clan, if you don't freeze and starve or get accidentally stabbed before spring. They toss you a roughly sewn tunic that smells like old sheep, and you change without complaint. The first rule of Viking winter survival? Pride is for the dead. The clan's jarl, an older man with eyes like ice and a scar that bisects his top lip, grunts at you from a seat near the hearth. He waves vaguely toward the back wall where there's an empty bench. That's where you'll be sleeping. The bed is nothing more than a wooden plank with a sack of straw and an animal pelt that may still have bits of animal on it. You try not to think about that. Now, here's a little historical truth bomb. Most Viking longhouses weren't these romanticised halls of heroic debauchery. They were practical, cramped, and designed to keep everyone and everything alive. People and animals, tools, food, all crammed under one roof to share warmth and protection from the eternal ice slap that was Scandinavian winter. There was no central heating, no windows, just body heat, fire, and the occasional burst of someone yelling in their sleep. As the night drapes itself around the house like a wolf pelt, the light dims. One of the women walks by and tosses a few logs into the hearth. They flare, casting shadow puppets on the beam-lined ceiling. The goats grunt. Someone starts snoring already. A child cries out, possibly an Old Norse, you're not sure. You roll onto your side, your new fur blanket crackling slightly from frost. The wood under your body is less bed and more punishment plank, and you realise immediately there's no mattress culture here. Your face is cold, but your back is sweating from the fire. You shift. Bad move. A flea bites your ankle. So why didn't they freeze? That's the big question, right? These people weren't superhuman. They were just really, really good at getting through the night. The longhouse itself was an engineering marvel of its time. The thick sod walls insulated like nothing else. The roof covered in turf and straw trapped rising heat. Smoke from the hearth didn't have a chimney to escape through. It just slowly filtered out of a hole in the roof or leaked through the eaves. Which means yes, everyone was lightly smoked all winter long, like jerky. But hey, smoked meat lasts longer, right? You cough a little. The smoke gets in your eyes. A man near you rolls over and pulls his bear fur tighter. It smells like last week's stew. You sigh and settle in. This is your life now. You're still not asleep when a soft thud echoes through the longhouse. Someone else arrives late, stomping off snow and muttering a curse you don't recognise. The door flap whips open. Icy wind racing through the hall like it owns the place. You curl tighter into your blanket. One of the goats sneezes. Here's something quirky for you. Archaeologists once found Viking beds that were just hollowed out logs stuffed with hay, with small decorative carvings along the side. Picture a coffin that decided to double as a guest bed. Charming. It's unclear whether these were for honoured guests, the elderly, or just really short people. Scholars still argue about it. That's the thing, so much of Viking sleep culture is still guesswork. Very few people back then were like, "Dear future historians, here's exactly how I curled up each night. You're welcome." Back in your reality, someone starts murmuring a dream or a prayer, or maybe a curse. You can't tell, but it makes the hairs rise on your arm, and you finally pull the fur up over your head. It doesn't help. You can hear everything. The wood creaking under shifting weight, the embers whispering in the hearth, a whisper of wind like breath on the eaves. You close your eyes and try to sleep, not because you're comfortable, but because you have to. The Viking winter doesn't care if you're jet-lagged, culture-shocked, or sore from the worst bed of your life. You sleep, or you don't make it. And with that charming bedtime thought, your eyes finally begin to shut. Sleep doesn't come easily. It's the kind that creeps in grudgingly, like a cat deciding whether or not to trust you. One moment you're listening to the pops and sighs of the fire, the next you're jolting awake because someone nearby rolled over and elbowed you square in the back. Welcome to your first night in a Viking longhouse where privacy is a myth, body heat is currency, and everyone shares everything, especially the air, the smells, and the coughs. You lie there on your scratchy straw-stuffed bench, trying to find a comfortable angle that doesn't dig a wooden edge into your spine. The goats somehow look more peaceful than you do, curled into warm balls of fluff in the corner near the hearth. The warriors, tough, broad, and snore-prone, are sprawled across the opposite wall, arms over their eyes, hands still dangerously close to weapons that glint in the low firelight. It's clear that, for them, sleeping and being on guard are never entirely separate things. The longhouse isn't silent. Far from it. There's a constant undercurrent of human noise. Someone is grinding their teeth. Another breathes so heavily it sounds like a forge bellows. A child whimpers in her sleep, murmuring soft words in Old Norse. One of the older women mutters a prayer to Freya as she tucks a sleeping infant into the crook of her arm. The layered voices blur together, a weirdly comforting audio quilt, stitched together by crackling embers and the occasional shifting of wooden beams above you. As your eyes adjust more fully, you begin to notice the little details of the space. Charred cooking pots hang on hooks above the hearth. Bundles of dried herbs dangle from ceiling beams, adding hints of earthy scent. Lavender, maybe, or yarrow to the otherwise pungent mix of sweat, smoke, and livestock. Wooden tools, leather boots, and long-handled weapons lean casually against the walls like no one worries about burglars because, well, if you break in, there's a very good chance you'll be dead before breakfast. It's hard to say exactly how many people are here, but at least 20 bodies are sleeping under one roof. This is not a nuclear family situation. This is the full village package. Warriors, women, children, elders, and animals, all huddled together in a single structure with no interior walls. The layout is deliberate. Everyone sleeps near the central hearth, radiating out from the heat like spokes from a wheel. The wealthier folks, like the Jarl and his immediate family, get the prime sleeping spots, raised benches with thicker furs tucked closer to the fire. You're in one of the drafty zones near the entrance. It's an honour just to be included. You try again to drift off, watching the firelight flicker against the carved wooden posts that hold up the ceiling. Some of the posts are engraved with what look like animals, maybe dragons, maybe bears, or possibly just something someone carved when they were bored. One of them has a face that seems to smirk at you in the dark. You blink, still smirking. You pull the fur over your face again and pretend you didn't see that. Here's a fun little historical fact to distract you. Viking longhouses sometimes had legends attached to them, stories about spirits that lived in the roof beams or under the floorboards. They weren't necessarily evil spirits, but they weren't not evil either. They were more like roommates with boundaries. People would leave offerings in the corners of the house, a bit of bread, a splash of ale, maybe a charm carved from bone just to keep things cordial. No one wanted a haunting midwinter. The nights were long enough already. Just as you're settling again into something like rest, you hear a low voice. Two warriors at the far end, whispering in that gravelly Viking murmur that always sounds like they're plotting something, even if they're probably just arguing over stew recipes. One laughs, low and dry, then coughs, and the sound echoes through the rafters. A few people groan. Someone throws a piece of bread at them. It hits with a soft thud, and then everything goes quiet again. You're still not asleep, but you're close. Your body has stopped shivering. Your breath fogs less with each exhale. And the fur blanket, despite smelling vaguely of smoked ham, has started to feel like a small, reluctant hug. It's worth mentioning that in these winter months, sleep wasn't one long stretch of unconsciousness. Vikings didn't necessarily sleep through the entire night. Historians debate this, but there's some evidence that people in the medieval world practiced what's called segmented sleep. Basically, you'd sleep for a few hours, wake up naturally around midnight, then stay up for an hour or two, talking, eating, praying, even visiting neighbours, and then go back to sleep until dawn. Sound weird? Maybe. But your brain is already halfway there. Your body clock, out of its usual rhythm, is trying to figure out if this first sleep thing is done yet. And here's a quirky wrinkle. There's at least one record of people using that mid-sleep time to, wait for it, chat with the dead. Yeah, spirits of ancestors, gods, or just strange voices in the dark. It was considered a liminal time when the veil between worlds thinned out, which means if you hear someone talking softly to a spot on the floor, maybe don't interrupt. You start to doze finally, lulled by the rhythmic sound of someone slowly sharpening a blade in their sleep. Yes, that's a thing, apparently. But then, just as your brain begins slipping into dream territory, there's a sudden loud crack from outside, wood splitting, snow falling off the roof, or possibly Thor throwing another fit. Everyone jolts slightly, but no one fully wakes. Except you. You sit up, heart thudding, and peek out from under your fur. A boy across the hall rolls over, his hand still resting on the hilt of a dagger, even in sleep. The Jarl doesn't move at all. He might be dead or just very, very committed to REM cycles. Outside, the wind howls again. Inside, the fire pops, a goat farts, and everything returns to its natural state. Warm chaos. You lie back down, adjusting your body into something vaguely coffin-shaped, and try again to surrender to the long Viking night. At this rate, you might just make it to morning, or you'll be sleep-deprived, grumpy, and covered in flea bites. Either way, welcome to the club. You wake to the quietest kind of chaos. No yelling, no horns, no explosions, just the low shuffle of fur-lined feet, the groan of ancient wood under shifting weight, and the whispery sound of cold breath meeting warm air. It's still dark, because of course it is. The Viking winter doesn't care about your need for a sunrise, but the hearth's been fed, and there's a faint glow dancing across the rafters now. Someone's already up, clinking iron tools near the fire, probably preparing breakfast or sharpening something ominous. You sit up slowly, and the first thing you realise is that every muscle in your back feels like it's been beaten with a frozen oar. The straw-stuffed bench you slept on may as well have been a pile of firewood. You stretch and instantly regret it. Your neck cracks, your spine complains, and something possibly alive scurries out from under your blanket. But hey, you're not dead, so that's a win. A woman with an intimidating braid and zero patience walks past and tosses a bundle into your lap. You open it. It's clothing. Well, clothing, in the same way that a sack of hair is technically a wig. Thick, coarse wool vaguely shaped like a tunic with matching trousers that feel like they've never once known softness. The socks are made of something resembling felt and they're damp. Not wet, just that permanent kind of damp that says, "Hello, I've seen things." You begin to layer up, and here it is, the unsung hero of Viking survival. Wool, thick, scratchy, lanolin-drenched wool. The kind that smells faintly of sheep even after years of use. Vikings didn't have synthetic insulation or heated floors. They had wool, fur, and stubbornness. Every layer you pull on adds a little insulation, even if it also adds about 3 pounds and makes your joints move like you're wrapped in a rug. Underclothes are usually a linen tunic and breeches if you're lucky, and if linen was available, which wasn't always the case. Over that, woolen tunic, thick pants, a hooded gobelwerk for outdoor ventures, and fur accessories where needed. Belts are used to cinch layers, trap heat, and hold tools, or weapons, or emergency snacks. You wrap a coarse scarf around your neck, stuff your feet into heavy leather boots lined with hay, yes, actual hay, and suddenly you feel 15% less miserable. That's a win too. You glance around the longhouse. Everyone's doing the same thing, layering up with efficiency born of necessity. There's no fussing, no complaining, just survival choreography. One man brushes ice crystals off his shoulder like dandruff. A woman ties a wool cord around her waist and secures it with a carved bone pin. A child in the corners is being bundled into so many layers he now resembles a screaming bundle of turnips. Here's a curious detail. Viking clothing wasn't just practical, it was surprisingly colourful. Natural dyes from plants, roots, and even crushed bugs gave life to otherwise dull winter gear. You spot one man tying bright red strips around his arms. Another woman's hood is dyed a deep muddy green. Even in the dead of winter, they brought a little brightness to their outfits. Fashion matters, even when you're dodging frostbite. Still, the cold creeps in. You sit back down near the hearth, the warmth licking at your layers. You tug the wool over your knuckles, grateful for even the smallest reprieve. And then you notice what's hanging on the wall beside you. A full bear pelt. Claws and all. Mounted like a trophy, but clearly used for warmth. It has that stiff, glossy look of something that's both useful and slightly haunted. You touch it. It's cold, of course, but it holds the promise of warmth. A luxury item in a world where luxury often means not freezing to death. Historically speaking, bearskins, deerskins, even wolf pelts were used to line beds, cloaks, or simply wrapped around the shoulders on the coldest nights. Fur was more than fashion, it was armour against the season. You're allowed to borrow a pelt, though you suspect you're on borrowed time too. Sleep in it, sweat in it, dream in it, just don't let it walk off on its own. There's something intimate about all of this. This communal preparation for another round of dark and cold. No one talks much. It's too early. But they move around each other with a kind of practiced grace, handing off furs, adjusting cloaks, passing cups of hot something or other. It's easy to imagine this rhythm repeating for generations, the same wool, the same fur, the same cold, always. You tug at the collar of your tunic, it itches like a curse, but you're getting used to the sensation. Comfort is a myth here, warmth is the goal, and these people, they've mastered the art of dressing like walking insulation. It's survival fashion, but it has its quirks. Like the wool caps, every adult wears one. They're all shaped differently, some tall and pointed, others round and floppy. Yours, handed to you by a child who then laughed and ran away, is way too big and smells like smoked onions. But it's warm. You pull it down low over your ears, and the world softens. The scratchy wool presses against your temples, and suddenly your head feels like it's being gently hugged by an angry sheep. You glance toward the entrance. It's still sealed, heavy wooden planks covered with a hanging hide to block drafts. But the wind seeps in through the seams, whispering threats across the floor. You wrap the cloak tighter around yourself, tucking in every edge like a burrito of survival. One of the warriors stretches and yawns, his arms brushing the wooden beams above. He's massive, covered in at least 5 layers of wool and fur, and yet still looks mildly annoyed to be awake. He catches your eye, shrugs as if to say, yep, still cold, then moves to the fire and holds out his hands. His mittens are literally 2 pieces of fur stitched into tubes. Want a fringe fact? Vikings actually used something like foot wraps, strips of cloth or fur wound tightly around the legs and feet before putting on boots. They were weirdly efficient, like ancient thermal socks, not exactly cosy, but they worked. You decide to try it later, once your dignity has eroded just a bit more. There's no denying it now, this is your life. It's itchy, it smells funny, and your arms feel like you've been stuffed into a sack of potatoes. But you're warm, or warm enough. You take a deep breath, the smell of wool and wood smoke filling your nose. You're wrapped up, layered down, and officially ready to face another day of surviving the coldest winter of your life, even if you still can't feel your toes. So here's the thing. They don't tell you about sleeping in the Viking Age. You're not really sleeping on anything, not in the modern sense. There's no soft mattress, no down pillow, and definitely no adjustable lumbar support. What you've got is a wooden bench that might have once served as a shelf or a chopping block or a casual torture device. On top of that, there's a loosely filled sack of straw that's decided to redistribute itself into every place except under your spine. Welcome to what passes for a bed. It's your second night in the longhouse. Your back already knows what's coming. You slowly settle down onto the bench again, hoping maybe the straw has magically become fluffier in the past 12 hours. It has not. The wooden slats creak under your weight, and a fine mist of dust puffs out of the straw pillow like it's exhaling in protest. The fur pelt that serves as your blanket is stiff from a day spent absorbing body heat, sweat, and possibly the soul of a former wolf. It doesn't smell better tonight, it just smells warmer. Across the longhouse, the evening is winding down. People are pulling off their boots, loosening belts, and shaking out cloaks. Some of the older folks are already asleep, their snores syncing up like some weird Nordic lullaby. The goats are back in their corner, curled up like lumpy rugs, and one of them gives you the stink eye as you make too much noise trying to wiggle your way into a comfortable sleeping position. There is no comfortable sleeping position. You try your side. Your hip bone finds the exact spot where two planks meet in an awkward kiss. You try your back. Your shoulders fall into a gap between slats and your neck cranes upward like a poorly designed bookshelf. Eventually you settle on curling into a fetal position, with the fur draped over you like a cape of reluctant warmth, and the pillow hugged under your arm more for emotional comfort than actual support. Here's a historical gem for you. Viking sleeping arrangements were wildly utilitarian. Beds were usually built into the structure of the longhouse itself, either carved into alcoves in the walls or created as raised platforms around the perimeter of the room. These platforms did to double duty as both seating during the day and beds at night. No privacy, no barriers, just an open space with people lying shoulder to shoulder, sometimes with livestock for extra heat. And if you think sleeping next to your snoring uncle is bad, imagine doing it next to someone who just finished a garlic-heavy stew and hasn't bathed since last solstice. Tonight, you've got one new luxury, a second animal skin, handed to you by a woman who took pity on your shivering last night. It's rougher than the first one, and the hide still has bits of matted fur, but you're not about to complain. You lay it under your back, trying to create some kind of buffer between your bones and the merciless wood. It helps, marginally. As you begin to settle, your eyes roam the dim ceiling beams overhead. In the firelight you can make out markings, scratches, carvings, little symbols left there by someone long ago. One of them looks like a serpent, another like a star, or maybe a fish. It's hard to tell in the flickering light, but you get the feeling they're more than just doodles. People mark the wood around their sleeping spots, not out of boredom, but for protection, comfort, maybe even company. A little-known fringe fact? Some Viking beds had carvings of gods or animals at the head and foot, almost like guardians. Archaeologists think they may have served both spiritual and decorative purposes, because if you're going to freeze to death, you may as well do it with style. Some were surprisingly ornate, especially for the wealthier folks. You don't get one of those beds, you get a plank and the distant hope of not waking up with a chicken nesting on your legs. And now comes the real bedtime ritual, the slow extinguishing of the longhouse. One by one, voices hush. Someone tosses the last log on the fire. A mother murmurs a final lullaby in a language that feels like a song made of rocks and wind. The flames dim down to coals, and a faint red glow pulses in the centre of the room like a heartbeat. The cold starts to press back in, filling the spaces where the heat retreats. You pull your furs tighter, tucking them under your feet, your knees, your chin. Every inch matters. The air inside the longhouse is warmer than outside, sure, but that doesn't mean it's warm. The moment the fire dies, the cold creeps in from the floor, through the walls, under your skin. You start to understand why some people just didn't make it through winter. Outside, the wind begins its nightly tantrum. It rattles the outer walls, whines between the boards, and throws small handfuls of snow against the roof with theatrical flair. Inside, though, it's quiet. Almost peaceful. Almost. One of the warriors nearby rolls over, snorts, and mutters something in his sleep. His hand flops over, bumping against yours, and you flinch instinctively. But he's out cold. You're not sure what's more unsettling, how deeply he sleeps, or how he's cradling a small axe like it's a stuffed animal. You finally start to doze, not because you're comfortable, but because your body's too tired to care anymore. The straw under you crackles with every breath. The wood creaks like it's trying to whisper secrets. Your face is half buried in fur, and the warmth of your own breath is the only thing keeping your nose from freezing off. Here's a scholarly debate that still hasn't been settled. Did Vikings have individual sleeping spaces, or did they all just sprawl out communally every night like a pack of wolves with anxiety issues? Some say they shared beds, especially couples or families, while others believe there was a strict system of hierarchy that determined who slept where and with whom. Honestly, based on what you've seen so far, it's probably both. Practicality first, modesty second, and comfort a very distant third. You shift again. The fur slips off your shoulder and cold air instantly dives down your tunic like it's been waiting for an opening. You yank the pelt back up and wrap your arms around yourself. Your fingers are stiff and you flex them slowly, one by one, trying to get the blood flowing. It's moments like this you realise just how much of Viking survival wasn't about heroics or raids or honour. It was just this. Lying in the dark, wrestling with cold and discomfort, and getting through the night. At last, your body starts to relax. Your mind drifts. The fire crackles low, the goats shift in their sleep, and the wind howls on, and somewhere behind you, someone starts snoring again, deep, guttural and rhythmic. You don't even mind this time. It's just part of the soundscape now, part of the long night. Your eyes close, and for now, the cold is held at bay. You're woken by the unmistakable scent of boiled meat, smoke, and something vaguely fishy. Your stomach grumbles before your eyes even open. The longhouse is slowly stirring to life again. You blink into the half-dark. Half-dark, noticing the faint morning light bleeding in through the animal hide-covered door. The fire's been stoked. A large pot hangs over it, bubbling gently, and the aroma wafts thick and slow like soup-flavoured fog. It's time to talk about what Viking warriors actually ate, especially in winter, and how that shaped the way they slept, moved and, well, survived. Spoiler, it's not a kale smoothie and a side of melatonin. Someone shoves a wooden bowl into your hands. No one says good morning. This culture doesn't do chit-chat until at least noon, apparently. Inside the bowl is a lumpy, greyish stew. You spot a piece of fish skin, something that might be turnip, and a suspiciously familiar-looking bone. The broth is thick with fat, floating herbs, and flavour that's best described as extremely functional. You eat it anyway, all of it. It's hot, salty, and oddly comforting. Your body reacts almost immediately, like a cold engine finally turning over. Warmth creeps from your belly outward. The meat is chewy, maybe dried and rehydrated overnight, and the fishy part? That's probably stockfish, turfisk, cod that's been dried, until it resembles salty leather, then softened in water and boiled into everything. Winter in Viking lands was not kind to agriculture. The ground froze, the animals huddled in barns, and food had to be whatever could be preserved. That meant salting, drying, smoking, fermenting. Nothing was fresh unless it was snow. You ate meat from the fall slaughter. Fish caught before the freeze, and root vegetables that could survive storage in cool, dark corners. Every bite was calculated. Food wasn't just nourishment, it was strategy. And here's where things get interesting. This food, especially in the evening, directly affected sleep. Vikings didn't follow a ketogenic diet on purpose, but they accidentally invented it. Heavy fats and proteins before bed meant slow digestion. That meant staying warmer through the night. Calories weren't just energy, they were insulation. You start to realise why the night before, despite the misery of your wooden plank bed, you eventually found sleep. Your body had been running a slow-burn furnace all night, converting meat and broth into heat and fatigue. A historical side note, some Viking households even ate a kind of porridge made with barley or oats, mixed with dried fruit or honey, if they were lucky. Sometimes it was dinner, sometimes it was breakfast, and sometimes, brace yourself, it was both. The consistency, somewhere between wet cement and edible glue, but it filled the belly. You glance toward the woman near the hearth, now stirring a second pot, with that exact look of someone preparing oat-based sadness. It smells vaguely of raisins and sorrow. Now, let's throw in a fringe fact for good measure. Vikings drank beer with their meals, even in winter. It was low in alcohol and safer than water, which, in the cold months, either froze or went foul in storage. They even had warm beer occasionally. Majöd, mead, or ale gently heated by the fire, often infused with herbs. You're handed a wooden cup of something steaming and golden brown. It tastes like a mix between old apples and pine needles, and it makes your chest feel like it's being hugged by a fireplace. You sip slowly, grateful for the warmth. This cup alone might be responsible for carrying you through another miserable night. But here's where the scholarly debate comes in. Some argue that these heavy evening meals made sleep worse. Yes, the calories helped regulate body heat, but a stomach full of fermenting fish and barley porridge could also mean indigestion, night sweats, and vivid dreams. If you've ever tried sleeping after overeating on Thanksgiving, imagine doing that every night for 5 months, in a room filled with 20 other gassy warriors. You start to wonder if some of the midnight mumbling last night was spiritual, or just gastrointestinal. After finishing your stew, you wipe the bowl with a crust of hard rye bread that could double as a weapon in close combat. You chew slowly, listening to the soft sounds of others doing the same. It's not exactly a lively breakfast. No one is telling jokes or discussing their dreams. Everyone is just trying to eat enough to get through the next 12 hours of cold work and darkness. The fire crackles behind you. One of the younger warriors lets out a huge belch, then mutters a quick apology to the gods. You assume that's customary. A woman coughs on the other side of the hearth and shakes her bowl upside down to show that yes, she got every last drop, you do the same. Wasting food in winter. That's not just frowned upon, it's a risk to the entire house. And here's something else. In Viking culture, food wasn't just about survival, it was also about rank. What you got and how much of it depended on your place in the household. The Jarl and his kin ate the best cuts. Warriors ate next, farmers and servants took the rest. Guests like you're somewhere near the goat tier. But honestly, if you've got a warm stew and a semi-digestible piece of bread, you're ahead of the game. You feel the fullness settling into your core, spreading heat through your limbs like a slow leak of comfort. You stand, stretch, and notice that your limbs ache a little less than yesterday. The food helped, the warmth helped, maybe even the community helped, even if no one's talking to you yet. Vikings weren't known for being chatty in the morning. One man finally breaks the silence with a loud hiccup and a muttered story about dreaming he fought a swan the size of a horse. Someone chucks you balls. Another says that means good fortune. A third says it means the gods are watching you. A fourth says it means you ate too much dried eel. No one agrees. Welcome to Viking dream interpretation. You're handed a cloth to wipe your hands, then someone tosses you a small piece of dried meat to chew on for later. Probably horse, possibly moose, definitely chewy. Now that your stomach is full and your fingers are warm, you feel the first true wave of sleepiness after waking up. It's a cruel trick. The body is cozy and ready to digest. The fire is still glowing and the goats are snoring, and all you want to do is crawl back onto that miserable straw bench and drift off again. But no such luck. The chores are coming. The snow needs clearing. The animals need feeding. There's wood to chop, gear to check, weapons to oil. It doesn't matter if your eyes are still half shut or your brain is floating in mead fog. Viking life waits for no one. Still, as you step outside into the sharp, blinding whiteness of morning, belly full and boots squeaking in snow, you take a second to appreciate the quiet victory. You slept, you ate, you're still here. That's enough. For now. By nightfall, the longhouse is humming again. Not with singing or laughter, but with the steady low rhythm of survival. The fire in the hearth spits sparks into the dark as a fresh log is added. Its bark still holding bits of frost from the pile outside. You're back on your bench, the same miserable plank from last night, and once again, you're trying to find that mythical sweet spot where your hip bone isn't trying to escape through your skin. Good luck with that. This time, though, you're thinking about something that didn't fully register until now. How hot it is inside. Not cozy, not warm, hot. You're sweating under your furs and woolen layers, and not in a pleasant beach vacation way. This is the sweat of someone who's been slow roasted by a fire that's trying too hard. Your clothes cling to you like wet burlap. Your feet are toasty, sure, but your face feels like it's been left next to a forge. And here's the kicker. This level of heat isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Back in the Viking Age, managing indoor heat in the dead of winter was a delicate, unending dance. Too little while and everyone freezes. Too much and you get what you're experiencing now. A sort of moist, smoky bakehouse filled with increasingly irritable warriors. The air is thick, almost soupy, and even your nose hairs feel warm. One of the goats near the hearth has given up entirely and is just lying flat, his belly rising and falling like a slow bellows. You pull off your hat and wipe your forehead. Steam rises from your scalp. This feels less like sleeping in a longhouse and more like being slowly poached in your own body fluids. The fire's the culprit, but also the saviour. It's the beating heart of the house. It never fully goes out, even at night. It's kept alive with dried logs, animal dung, and occasionally peat, which burns hot and long but smells like scorched moss. The hearth isn't just a fireplace, it's a stove, a heater, a light source, and socially the literal centre of the universe. Everything in the longhouse orbits around it. People sit by it, cook on it, warm their hands and feet near it, and yes, try to sleep beside it. But here's where things get weird. Most Viking longhouses didn't have chimneys. The smoke from the fire simply wafted upward into the rafters and slowly leaked out through holes or cracks in the roof. That means the upper third of the room is basically a permanent cloud of wood smoke. You're in the lower third, sure, but it still gets into your lungs. Your throat scratches, your eyes water, and you're coughing softly into your blanket like a Victorian orphan. Still, it's not all bad. That same smoke, as horrible as it feels now, helps preserve the meat hanging from the rafters. You hadn't noticed it before, but look up. There. Just beneath the ceiling beams, slabs of fish and animal fat dangle like weird chandeliers, slowly drying and smoking as the days pass. The longhouse, in a way, is one giant food dehydrator. Unintended side effect. You're being slow-smoked to ghost too. Congratulations, you're becoming jerky. A strange bonus. The smoke also keeps away insects. Fleas and lice still thrive, sure, but other pests, moths, flies, mice, tend to avoid the upper parts of the house, so in a way the air is part fire, part food, part fumigation. You try not to think about the fact that you're breathing the same smoke that's been marinating 3 dozen strips of goat meat for 2 weeks. It's a full sensory experience. But beyond the fire and smoke, there's another thing heating up the house. You. And the 20-some other people packed into this log-on-earth capsule like it's a human thermos. Every body gives off heat. That's great. Until everyone is bundled up in layers and sweating through their wool, turning the longhouse into a sauna run by silent, exhausted warriors. You're in a cloud of collective breath, and it's getting humid. One man near the door finally tosses off his outer cloak, revealing a tunic so soaked with sweat it clings to him like tree bark. He fans himself with a piece of birch bark. You give him a nod. He nods back. You're brothers in moist misery now. Now, let's dig into a fringe fact. Vikings sometimes ventilated the longhouse by cracking the door or lifting part of the roof, just enough to let the hot air escape without letting the full wrath of the winter night pour in. But this wasn't done casually. Opening the door meant losing heat and potentially letting in snow, wind, or, worse, bears. Yes, in some regions, bears could absolutely become unexpected guests, especially in deep snow years when food was scarce. So every time someone opened that door, they did so with a kind of cautious reverence, or a spear. You notice now that the draft under the door has been blocked with a rolled-up animal hide. Smart move. You're trapped in here with the heat, the smoke, and the increasingly potent body odour of your fellow longhouses. But on the bright side, you're not getting eaten by a bear tonight. Probably. As the night drags on, you begin the slow process of unlayering. First your scarf comes off, then the outer cloak. You loosen your belt, kick off one boot, then pull it back on when the cold air hits your foot like an insult. It's this constant back and forth, warm, cold, warm again. Comfort is just on the edge of every adjustment, but never quite close enough to grab. Here's where it gets even trickier. Humidity. As the fire burns and everyone breathes, humidity builds up. And in a space this tightly packed, it doesn't go anywhere. Your blankets get damp. Your clothes get damp. The walls sweat. You swear the goat next to you is starting to mildew. And once moisture sets in, so does the chill. Because the moment the fire dips too low or the wind outside picks up, all that dampness turns frigid. And suddenly you're not just uncomfortable, you're in danger. Some households had clever tricks, lining benches with bark, hanging fur cloaks to dry by the fire before sleeping, even placing heated stones wrapped in cloth at the foot of the bed. You consider trying that last one, then remember you are a guest and most of the stones are currently under a sleeping man the size of a small horse. You lie back down and wrap yourself in the now slightly damp fur. The heat presses in again. Your skin prickles, your face itches, the smoke stings your eyes, but somehow, against all odds, your body starts to give in. There's something about the sheer consistency of it all. The fire crackling, the soft snores, the warmth, even the discomfort, that tells your brain, yes, this is miserable, but it's a familiar miserable. You can sleep here. You roll onto your side, the fur clings to your sweat-damp tunic. A drop of condensation plinks from the rafters onto your cheek. You close your eyes anyway. The Viking night is not peaceful. It's not gentle, but it is survivable, and somehow you're doing it. You wake up to something between a grunt and a whistle, an unholy noise that slices through the fog of sleep like a dull axe. You blink your sticky eyes open and realise, oh no, it's happening again. The snoring, not just one person, multiple, layered, like some kind of primitive Viking jazz band where all the instruments are noses and throat flaps. There's a rhythm to it now, a deep-chested baritone near the hearth, a nasal buzz saw off to your right, and a high-pitched whistle somewhere behind you. You lie there, very still, trying not to laugh or scream. Instead, you just stare at the rafters and accept your fate. This is life in a longhouse. You're not just trying to survive the cold, you're trying to survive the night symphony. You shift slightly, your fur blanket rustling, and one of the snorers coughs and rolls over. Silence for 2 seconds before it starts again. Louder, more confident. It's almost impressive. You wonder if they rehearse during the day. And while the snoring is bad, it's not the only nighttime ritual you're now painfully familiar with. The longhouse, even in the dead of night, isn't truly asleep. It's resting with one eye open. Someone always stirs, someone always moves. A baby cries softly. A woman hums a lullaby under her breath, a tune that sounds more like a prayer than a song. One of the goats bleats in its sleep, and in the back of the room, someone begins telling a saga. You don't recognize the words, but the tone is unmistakable, low, rhythmic, rising and falling like the sea. It's not loud, and it's not for entertainment. This is a nighttime ritual, half muttered, half memorized, meant for the speaker more than the listener. An old man is lying on his side near the fire, talking to no one and everyone. His voice weaves through the snores and crackles of the hearth. You hear names: Sigurd, Freyja, Loki. The rest is lost in the hum of the longhouse. You don't need to understand it to feel it. The story is holding something together, maybe his sanity, maybe yours. This is how the Vikings passed the unbearable nights, not just with fire and furs, but with words. The oral tradition ran deeper than the fjords. Tales were tools, like axes or hammers used to shape the world, hold back fear, and pass time when the dark pressed in too close. You close your eyes and listen even as the snoring grows louder around you. It's not restful, but it's something. Eventually the saga fades. The old man sighs, rolls onto his back and joins the symphony. You are now officially surrounded, still not asleep. You sit up slowly, careful not to bump the man next to you. He's sprawled halfway off his bench, mouth open, hand still curled around the hilt of a small blade. You're honestly not sure if that's comforting or terrifying. You slip out of your blanket and pad softly toward the hearth. The embers are still glowing, and someone's left a kettle of something warm nearby, mead, broth, or just water. You drink from a wooden ladle, grateful for the heat. It's thin but sweet, maybe honey water. You wipe your mouth and lean back on your hands, staring into the fire. Then a hand touches your shoulder and you jump so hard you nearly land in the coals. It's one of the younger women, wrapped in a red-dyed cloak, eyes heavy with sleep but still open. She doesn't speak, just nods at the fire and gestures toward a small bundle of herbs hanging above it. You follow her gaze. The herbs sway gently with the rising heat. It hits you. These are sleep bundles. Dried lavender, maybe chamomile, mixed with other things you don't recognize, hung above the fire to release calming scents into the air. It's subtle. You hadn't noticed it before because you were too busy trying not to die of secondhand smoke and goat breath. But now you catch it, a faint, earthy sweetness in the air, trying its best to soothe the chaos. It's a fringe detail, but a real one. Vikings sometimes used herbal rituals to influence sleep and dreams. Bundles of plants were burned, hung, or scattered under pillows to encourage good rest or ward off nightmares. Some houses even smeared tar or fat mixed with herbs on the doorposts to keep away evil spirits. Others carved runes into bedposts, symbols of protection or symbols of, well, less innocent things. You eye the beams above your bench when you return. Are those scratches actually just cracks in the wood? Or are they runes? You can't be sure. The firelight makes everything uncertain. You lay back down, feeling the herbal scent curl into your nostrils. Someone near you mutters again in their sleep. This time it sounds like a name. You freeze, then they roll over and snort. Never mind. But the thing is, dreams meant something here. You'd heard murmurs all day, whispers about someone dreaming of a wolf with 3 eyes, or a ship made of ice, or a sword singing to them in their sleep. People talked about dreams, not like modern folks do with a shrug and a laugh. No, here dreams had weight. They were messages, prophecies, warnings. Entire decisions, journeys, raids, marriages, were made based on what someone saw in their sleep, which raises a question. What have you been dreaming? You're not sure. Everything's been too fragmented, too loud. You remember bits. A vast sea, a fire on the shore, someone calling your name in a language you don't speak. You're not sure if it's a dream or just the longhouse playing tricks on your brain. Either way, you pull the fur tighter around your shoulders and let your eyes close again. Someone farts loudly, and a child giggles in the dark. The moment passes. It's almost funny, in a grim kind of way. For a group known for violence, pillaging and fierce independence, the Vikings spent their nights wrapped in an intensely communal existence. Shared air, shared heat, shared stories. And yes, shared bodily functions. There's no escaping each other, not in the cold, not in the dark, so they made it work. They built a rhythm. You're starting to fall into it too, whether you like it or not. You stretch once more, this time with less hope and more resignation. The fur itches your neck. The straw crunches under your hip. A puff of warm breath escapes your lips and fades into the cold air. And then, finally, you drift. The snoring fades. The longhouse grows distant. And for a brief fleeting moment, it almost feels like peace. You're yanked out of sleep by the sharp jab of a stick to your ribs, not a sword, not an axe. Just a stick, short, splintery, and wielded with exactly the kind of enthusiasm that says, you're late. Your eyes snap open to see a teenage boy with frost in his hair and a smirk on his face. He says something in Old Norse, which you don't understand, but the tone is unmistakable. It's your turn. Time to watch the night. You sit up slowly, your body groaning like an old ship. Your muscles ache. Your neck is locked into a weird angle from sleeping half on, half off the bench, and your fingers are too stiff to form fists. The boy tosses you a fur-lined cloak and points toward the heavy front door. Great, you're on night watch. The glamorous life continues. You shuffle toward the entrance, boots thudding softly on packed dirt. Most of the longhouse is still asleep. The snoring persists, of course, but it fades behind you as you push aside the hide curtain and brace yourself against the night. Instant regret. The cold dirt outside doesn't just hit you, it hunts you. The air slams into your face, biting your nose, your ears, your lungs. Your breath fogs instantly, blooming out in ghostly shapes that vanish as quickly as they come. You wrap the cloak tighter around your shoulders and step out into the snow-covered world where the sky above is ink black and starless. The only light comes from the faint glow of the fire still crackling inside the longhouse, spilling gold onto the white snow like spilled mead. Your job is simple. Stand guard, look for threats, listen for sounds, protect the household while they sleep. But what no one tells you is how boring it is. The cold keeps you alert for about 3 minutes. Then your body adjusts, and what follows is an hour or two of intense, freezing solitude broken only by the occasional distant howl, or your own teeth clicking like bad percussion. You make your rounds around the longhouse, eyes scanning the tree line, squinting at every shape that might be a bear, a raider, or just a bush having an identity crisis. The forest beyond is silent. The snow muffles everything. Even your footsteps disappear into a hushed crunch, like the earth is trying to keep its own secrets. This is when the sleepiness hits you. You lean against a wooden post, trying to keep your eyes open. You rub your arms, bounce a little, shift your weight, slap your face lightly. It doesn't help. Your brain, addled by cold and exhaustion, begins to drift. The snow starts to look comfortable. The woodpile looks like a great place for a nap. You know you shouldn't, but your knees buckle a little, and suddenly, you're crouched low to the ground, cheek resting against your own shoulder. The stars above swirling softly. Let's talk about Viking night shifts, shall we? Scholars agree that Viking longhouses maintain night watches, especially in winter when raids, wild animals, and general chaos was still possible. It wasn't about paranoia. It was necessity. You never knew what would come crawling out of the forest. But those on watch weren't always full-time warriors. It could be anyone capable of holding a spear and staying awake. And therein lies the issue, staying awake. You pinch your leg to stay conscious. You hum a tune you barely remember. You talk to yourself. You squint at a suspicious snowdrift and imagine it morphing into a troll. That works, briefly. Eventually, you hear something move. A soft rustle. A crack of ice. You're upright in an instant, hand tightening around the small hatchet they let you borrow for this lovely excursion. You strain your ears. The wind picks up. The trees sway. Another sound, closer this time. You step forward, breath caught in your throat. Then a raccoon sprints across the snow. You stand there, heart hammering, hatchet still raised. The raccoon disappears into the underbrush. You stare after it. You want to laugh, but your mouth is too frozen to curve. That's the danger of sleep deprivation in the cold. It messes with your mind. You're no longer just tired. You're seeing things. Shapes move where they shouldn't. Sounds come from nowhere. A piece of snow falls from a branch and you jump like someone fired a crossbow. You could swear the longhouse breathes behind you, creaking softly in its sleep. Even the shadows seem to stretch. Let's throw in a fringe fact for flavour. There are stories, real, recorded stories, from medieval Scandinavia of people encountering spirit animals or phantom enemies during night watch. Whether they were hallucinations or folklore given life by exhaustion, no one knows. One tale even tells of a man who chased a shadowy figure all night, only to find he'd been circling his own house for hours, barefoot in the snow. When found, his hair had turned white. You blink hard and stare at your boots. Still on. Good. You make your way back toward the entrance. Your shift is almost up. A faint grey light is beginning to bloom behind the mountains, a sickly hint of dawn. The world is still frozen, still quiet, but it's changing. The night is beginning to exhale. You push the door open and step inside, greeted by a wall of warmth and smell. The fire's still burning. The longhouse breathes smoke and sweat and safety. You hang your cloak on a peg and tiptoe back to your sleeping spot. The boy who woke you earlier is now snoring upside down on his bench, legs dangling off like a broken scarecrow. You shake his boot. No reaction. You jab him with the same stick he used on you. He flinches and grunts but doesn't wake. You jab harder. Eventually he rolls over and mutters something that sounds like a curse. Your watch is done. You crawl back onto your bench, pulling your damp furs over you. Every bone in your body feels colder than it should. Your hands are numb. Your toes are curled so tight you're afraid they'll snap, but your heart is still pounding from the adrenaline. You lie there, wide-eyed, trying to fall asleep, but your brain is still outside, watching shadows move in the snow. And here's the final insult. Just as you start to drift off, someone near you stretches and yawns loudly. Another sits up and starts stirring the morning fire. The rest of the longhouse begins to rouse. Your night's over, and the day's just begun. Sleep doesn't come, not this time. Your body lies flat, tucked beneath the same scratchy fur and bundled in the same damp wool, but your mind is still out in the snow, pacing back and forth like a restless spirit. Every whiggy-so of the longhouse, every fluster of wind against the roof, every grunt and shuffle from the other sleepers sets your nerves jangling. You've been on night watch now, and something about that changes you. The darkness doesn't feel restful anymore. It feels aware. You're exhausted, sure. Muscles heavy, face flushed with cold fatigue. But your eyes won't stay shut. You stare across the longhouse toward the weapons rack, barely visible in the dim firelight. Swords, axes, spears, all lined up like loyal dogs waiting for the next command. You start to understand something crucial now. In this world, even sleeping is done with caution. Because Viking warriors didn't just fight with their weapons, they slept with them. Not romantically, though who knows, but practically, strategically. You're expected to sleep with your weapon within arm's reach. Not under your pillow, because that would be madness with a blade sharp enough to split bone, but tucked nearby, leaning against your bench or lying flat beside you. It's cold metal an extension of your readiness. You glance to your right. Sure enough, the warrior next to you, tall, bearded, snores like a log, has his sword resting beside his bedroll, hilt toward his chest. One flick of the wrist and it'd be in his hand. You have a small sax, a short utility knife that doubles as a last-ditch defense tool. It's not much, but it's sharp, and now it's sleeping right beside you like a very judgmental bedmate. Historically speaking, Viking warriors were known for their constant state of preparedness. Whether on land or sea, a warrior's weapon was never far. Stories survive of men who could wake from dead sleep and rise with sword in hand in under 3 heartbeats. One saga even mentions a man who killed an intruder before fully opening his eyes. Another tale tells of a warrior who had his sword tied to his wrist while sleeping, just in case. Practical? Maybe. Comfortable? Not in the slightest. And here's the fringe detail you didn't ask for, but now can't unknow. Some warriors actually named their weapons. Swords had identities, histories, personalities. You weren't just carrying a tool, you were sleeping beside a companion, a silent partner in blood. Imagine whispering goodnight to your axe. Some of them probably did. You sit up slightly and look again at the weapon rack. There's a Dane axe hanging there, Massive, brutal, beautiful. Its blade glints faintly in the firelight. You're not entirely sure who it belongs to, and honestly, you're a little afraid to ask, but you admire it the way you might admire a sleeping bear. Lovely to look at, but don't poke it. The man to your left rolls over in his sleep, one arm draped protectively over a wooden shield. It's not paranoia, it's habit. These people have been raided, have done the raiding, and know that the most vulnerable moment of the day is when your eyes are closed. So they train for it. They sleep light. They position their gear strategically. Even in rest, they're ready. And you're learning. Slowly, you pull your sayax a little closer and nestle it between the wall and your hip. Not too close, you're not trying to feel it yourself in your sleep, but close enough to feel its presence. You lie back down, body still humming with unease, but strangely comforted by the weight of cold steel nearby. Now here's where scholarly debate enters the room, quietly, respectfully, like a historian in a cardigan. Some experts argue that sleeping with weapons was more about tradition than practicality, that most raids happened during the day, and that the threat of being attacked in one's home while asleep was rare. Others say, sure, but you ever tried being a Viking? Better safe than speared. You lie in the middle of that debate, wide-eyed and itchy. The longhouse shifts again. Someone coughs wetly in the far corner. The fire pops, sending a burst of sparks up into the smoky air. A few land on the nearest fur cloak, but no one moves. Either it didn't catch or they're too tired to care. You watch the flames for a while, hoping their rhythm will lull you. It doesn't. Instead, your thoughts spiral. You think about being attacked in your sleep, what it would feel like. Would you even get a chance to react? Or would it be over before you knew it? You're not sure if these thoughts are born of fear or practicality. Maybe both. You reach down again, fingers grazing the hilt of your sayax. It's solid, cold, real. You pull it out briefly and turn it over in the firelight. The blade is worn, slightly nicked from use. It's not ceremonial. It's been in fights. You trace your thumb along the spine, careful to avoid the edge. There's something oddly comforting about it. Like it knows its purpose. Unlike you, currently flopping around in a fur blanket questioning your life choices, eventually the fire begins to dim. The longhouse settles. The snoring softens into background noise again. You tuck the knife back beside you, adjust the fur, and try again to find some semblance of sleep. Your body is beyond tired, but your mind refuses to fully shut down. It lingers, perched on edge like a raven waiting for a signal. And yet, this is the Viking way. Always ready, always listening, always halfway between sleep and survival. You drift off at last, not because you're relaxed, but because your body simply gives up. The sayax is warm now, heated by your side. The longhouse exhales, and in that narrow space between exhaustion and fear, you finally fall into something like rest, your weapon, your blanket, and your body all woven together like threads in the same fraying net. Outside, the wind picks up, the trees groan, and inside you dream of battles you haven't fought yet. When the dream comes, it doesn't creep in gently. It crashes. Like a wave against a cliff, it arrives all at once and leaves you gasping in its wake. You're not in the longhouse anymore. You're standing in the middle of a vast, snow-covered plain beneath a bruised sky. Ice cracks under your feet and wind howls through a dead forest behind you. In your hand is a sword, not your sayax, but something larger. Heavier, ancient. It hums in your grip like it's breathing. Across the plain, something watches you. A wolf, but not just any wolf. This one is massive. Its fur the colour of ash. Its eyes like pale moons. It doesn't move. It just waits. And somehow, you know its name. You wake up choking on your own breath. The longhouse surrounds you again, warm and dark and real. You're drenched in sweat, the fur blanket kicked half off your body, and your sayax is still pressed against your hip like a quiet reminder that, yes, this world is the real one. Mostly. You sit up slowly, pulse hammering in your ears. From the opposite bench wall, someone is already staring at you. It's the seer. She's old, hunched, wrapped in layers of faded wool and fur that look like they have been handed down from gods themselves. Her eyes catch the firelight, strange and glassy, like she sees through it, and through you. She doesn't speak, just lifts one gnarled finger and points toward the door. Then she closes her eyes again, as if the conversation is over before it began. You don't move, not yet. Instead, you sit there, heart still rattling from the dream, mind scrambling to assemble what just happened. It felt like a story, but more vivid, more intentional, not a dream, not exactly. This is how you learn about Norse sleep lore. In this world, dreams are not idle things. They are tools, messages, sometimes even weapons. What you see in your sleep is often believed to come from the gods, or from something worse. People whisper about dreams the way modern folks whisper about omens or ghosts, half afraid, half hoping they're real. It's not superstition. It's tradition. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders and step outside. The seer's message, silent as it was, lingers in your gut. You're not sure what you're supposed to do, but you know this much. That dream meant something. The night air is cold, cleaner than you remember it. The stars have returned, blanketing the sky with a quiet brilliance. The snow crunches under your boots as you move past the edge of the longhouse, into the clearing beyond. You don't know what you're looking for. The wolf? The sword? Some kind of cosmic explanation? Instead, you find the seer again, already seated beside a stump just beyond the firelight. She must have come through another entrance. How she moved that fast is beyond you. Her hands are busy grinding something in a bowl. Dried herbs, crushed stone, maybe bone. You don't ask. She gestures for you to sit. You obey. Then she speaks. Her voice is low and creaky, like wind through dead branches. She asks you what you saw. You hesitate. What if it's just a dream? What if it's nothing? But she waits, unmoving. So you tell her. The snow, the sword, the wolf, the silence, the knowing. She nods, says nothing for a long time. Then she begins to explain. In Norse belief, dreams fall into two categories, meaningless and message-bearing. Yours, she says, is the second kind. The wolf especially is significant. It could be a representation of Fenrir, the monstrous wolf prophesied to break free and swallow Odin himself. Or it could be a guardian, a spirit tied to your fate, or, she adds without blinking, it might be your spirit. Wolves, after all, walk both the waking world and the dream realm. You try to protest. It was just a dream, but she silences you with a look that says, you wouldn't be here if it were just a dream. Fringe fact break. Viking seers, or völur, were often believed to travel between worlds, not physically, but spiritually. Some practiced saga, a kind of trance magic that allowed them to see into the future or uncover hidden truths. These practices often involved herbs, chanting, and deep, intentional sleep. Yes, that's right, magic naps, and people paid attention to what seers dreamed. She finishes grinding whatever concoction she's making and presses it into a small leather pouch. She ties it shut with a frayed cord and presses it into your palm. Sleep with this, she murmurs. It will show you what the wolf wants. You nod, stunned into silence. She waves you off. The session is over. You walk back to the longhouse under a sky scattered with stars and questions. Your fingers close tightly around the pouch. It smells sharp, earthy, a little bitter. You slip back inside, the warmth hitting you like a thick blanket of breath. The others are still asleep. The fire's down to coals now, flickering low and soft. You return to your bench, unwrap the fur, and tuck the pouch under your head. As you settle in, your body strung tight with questions, you begin to notice how others are sleeping. Not just with weapons, but with tokens. Carved bone charms, braided strings tied to wrists, small satchels like yours pressed under pillows. Sleep here isn't just rest, it's ritual. And dreams? Dreams are currency, clues, warnings. A scholar once wrote that the Norse saw sleep as a journey into another realm. When you dream, you're not just idly imagining, you're visiting. The gods, the dead, the spirits of animals and places, they can all speak to you there. But whether you can understand what they're saying, that's the tricky part. You close your eyes again, not hoping for rest, but waiting. Waiting for the wolf, for the dream, for whatever comes next. And as sleep begins to slide its cool fingers over you, one last thought bubbles to the surface. Maybe this isn't just about surviving winter anymore. Maybe you're being pulled into something deeper, something older. The next night the cold changes. You've been here long enough now to know what to expect when the sun slips below the mountains and the longhouse is closed up like a wooden lung. Warm inside, breathless, loud. But tonight, something's different. The air is sharper, the quiet outside heavier. The walls seem to groan more deeply, as if the very structure of the house is tensing against the pressure of what's happening beyond the door. It's a blizzard. Not snow, not a storm. A full, furious, world-swallowing blizzard. The The kind that doesn't just fall but devours. You can feel it through the floorboards, through the beams, in the way the fire snaps and leans toward the centre of the hearth, as if it too is trying to avoid the cold outside. You huddle under your furs earlier than usual, shivering before the fire even dims. You've added another layer. Someone lent you an old oversized cloak that smells like onions and wet dog, but it's heavy and warm. You're grateful for it. Grateful for the way it wraps around you and mutes the rising sound of the wind as it claws at the walls like something alive. Then, without ceremony, the door slams open. A man stumbles in, face white with snow, beard stiff with frost. The curtain of hide flaps wildly as snow pours in behind him, swirling across the floor like smoke. Several people jump up. Others groan. You scramble to help slam the door shut again, pushing with your shoulder until the bar drops into place with a satisfying solid thud. The house is sealed once more, but not in time to keep the blizzard from getting its claws inside. It doesn't take long. The cold moves fast, like it knows how to find the cracks. It settles under the door, along the seams in the walls, through the roof beams. The heat from the hearth feels suddenly weak, as though it's second-guessing itself. The longhouse tightens, drawing everyone closer. People begin rearranging. Furs shifted, benches shared, children bundled tighter. Even the goats are dragged closer to the centre of the room. One of them bleats like it's offended by the relocation. Your sleeping bench is too close to the wall, you already know that. You felt the draft there even on calmer nights. Tonight it's a wind tunnel. You grab your sayax, your cloak and your fur and slide to the floor closer to the hearth. Not near the chieftain, let's not tempt fate, but close enough to feel a little more heat and a little less imminent frostbite. Historically, this isn't dramatised. There are records and sagas describing nights just like this, when the cold got inside the house. When snow blew through chinks in the roof and animals had to be brought into the living space to keep the temperature from dipping into deadly territory. Viking longhouses were tough, but not invincible. Extreme weather pushed them to the edge. A woman begins shoving wooden wedges into the gaps under the door. Another man pulls out extra furs from a chest near the back. Someone tosses a bundle of kindling onto the hearth, and the fire flares up with a loud pop, showering sparks into the air. You're sitting cross-legged now, wrapped tight and staring into the flames like they might start talking. And the thing is, when a blizzard hits, no one really sleeps, not deeply, not safely. The longhouse becomes a kind of limbo caught between rest and survival. People doze in shifts, others stay awake entirely, keeping the fire alive, checking for leaks, listening for the creak that means a beam might give. Even the loudest snorers are quiet tonight. The storm owns everything now. It doesn't ask permission, it just is. And here's your quirky fringe fact for the night. In some Norse settlements, families would intentionally bring snow into the house, packing it along the outer walls to create makeshift insulation. Snow as warmth. It sounds backwards, but a tightly packed snow wall could block drafts and trap heat better than bare timber. Nature, weirdly, used as a defence against itself. You consider this as a sudden gust slams the roof hard enough to send dust raining down from the rafters. A child starts to cry, an elder whispers something, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. Someone mutters Jotun, the frost giants of legend, not entirely a joke. In Norse mythology, blizzards were often seen as the breath of giants, or worse, omens, not just bad weather, but a warning from the gods or the land itself. A punishment, a cleansing, or a sign of something darker looming. Some believed you could hear voices in the storm. Dead warriors, lost souls, ancestors arguing about your fate. You strain your ears now, half curious, half afraid. All you hear is the roar of snow and wind. But it's not hard to imagine something hidden in that noise. Back inside, the air has turned thick with breath and wood smoke. It swirls lazily above your head, trapped under the sagging roof. The fire crackles bravely, but it's losing the battle. You lie down on the floor near the others, elbows touching, legs tucked, body curled inward like a fossil. Sleep isn't optional. It's just delayed. A small pot of something warm passes around, thick, fatty broth with unidentifiable chunks in it. You take a sip. It's lukewarm and strange, but it sits heavy in your gut. You lie back down and close your eyes again. Not in hope of dreams, just in hope of stillness. But the cold has other plans. It nibbles your fingertips, it pokes at your toesies, it slides under your cloak and behind your ears. Every few minutes you have to shift, flip, rearrange. Sleep in this state is more like stuttering. A moment here, a breath there. Then another gust rattles the longhouse and you're awake again, blinking into the dark. You find yourself huddled near a goat at one point. Mutual desperation, really. You don't know its name, but it's warm and doesn't mind sharing space. You rest your hand on its side and feel the slow rise and fall of its breath. A little island of heat in the storm. And you begin to understand this isn't about comfort anymore. It never was. It's about endurance. The cold will try to peel you apart piece by piece. The longhouse will strain to hold itself together. But you, and everyone here, you survive by clustering, breathing together, keeping the fire fed, the door closed, the walls patched. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic. But it's what keeps you alive. And eventually, somewhere between a cough and a crack of ice, you slip into a shallow, dreamless sleep. The kind that doesn't restore but pauses the breaking. And tonight, that's enough. Time disappears. You don't know how long it's been since the blizzard hit. Days, weeks, it could be morning or midnight outside. There's no real difference now. The longhouse has become your entire world, sealed in frost and fire and breath. The only light comes from the hearth. The only weather report comes from the groaning of the roof beams. You've lost track of day and night, of when you last washed, or when you last dreamed. The world outside might as well be another planet. You're not living in winter anymore. You're living in the absence of time. It's not just you. Everyone in the longhouse is slipping into the same rhythm or lack thereof. People move like they're underwater, sluggish and quiet. Conversations have shrunk to nods and grunts. There's a kind of haze in the air, a mix of smoke, sweat, and maybe something else, something mental. It's not exhaustion exactly. It's more like drift. A slow unravelling of the usual markers. Breakfast, chores, sleep, supper. They still happen, but in strange order. Sometimes someone gets up and eats in the middle of the night. Sometimes everyone sleeps through what should be morning. And you've joined the club. You're no longer counting the hours. You don't even remember what day it is. You sleep when you can. You eat when food is passed to you. You sit near the hearth for long stretches, just staring at the flames, feeling your thoughts dissolve into flickers and shadows. It should be disturbing, but somehow it's not. It's just what this is now. This is what happens when the sun stops rising. In the deep north, winter doesn't just bring snow and cold, it brings a kind of night that never ends. The sun, if it shows up at all, limps across the horizon like it forgot its job. The sky turns pale, then dark again, all in the time it takes to finish a bowl of stew. For ancient Norse societies, this was just part of life. You didn't fight the darkness, you folded yourself into it. But the psychological effect? That's something else entirely. Modern science calls it circadian rhythm disruption, when your internal body clock gets wrecked by the absence of light. Your hormones rebel, your sleep becomes erratic, you feel tired all the time, even if you're technically getting rest. You get irritable, foggy, sometimes even depressed. And in a world without clocks, without electric light, without structure, your mind begins to drift just like your body does. That's you now. You wake up curled at the foot of your bench with a piece of bread still in your hand. At some point in the last few hours, or days, you ate, and fell asleep in the same breath. Across the hearth, two warriors are sitting cross-legged, staring into space, their swords resting on their laps like sleepy pets. One is humming softly to himself. The other blinks slowly, as if trying to remember who he is. No one seems alarmed. This is just the shape of the season. But here's a fringe little gem. Vikings might have had their own version of seasonal coping strategies. There are clues in the sagas, strange passages about men sleeping through the wolf months, or families taking turns keeping the fire alive while others entered the long rest. Some scholars even argue that a semi-hibernation state may have been normal, people doing the bare minimum to stay alive, conserving energy, slowing down their lives to match the dark. It's less poetic than the tales of glory and battle, but more truthful. And it's not just the body that slows. The house changes too, the walls sweat, the rafters grow damp. The tools hung near the fire warp slightly from constant heat and moisture. You can smell everything more acutely now. The fermented tang of stored fish, the woolly musk of too many people in too little space, the sour hint of smoke clinging to every object. The world inside the longhouse becomes a texture, a weight pressing on you gently but constantly. And you start to crave light. Not warmth, just light. You catch yourself staring into candles, poking at the embers of the fire, even lingering too long at the crack in the wall, where daylight seeps through for 10 precious minutes before disappearing again. Light feels like a rumour, a memory. There's a quiet moment, maybe the middle of the night, maybe not, when you're lying under your furs, eyes open, and you hear someone whispering near the door. You roll over slightly and see the seer again. She's speaking to someone, maybe herself, maybe the spirits she keeps in her cloak pockets. The words are low and rhythmic, a chant almost. You can't make them out, but they ripple through the room like wind. Then you hear another voice, this one much younger. A boy. He's asking a question. You can't hear the words, but the tone is clear. It's about the sun. The seer's answer is longer this time. And this time you catch a single word. Ragnarok. Ah, that old chestnut. In Norse mythology, Ragnarok isn't just the end of the world. It's the end of light. The sun is swallowed by a wolf. The sky breaks. The stars vanish. It's cosmic, dramatic, and weirdly appropriate when you haven't seen daylight in over a week. You wonder if everyone's thinking about it. If deep down this season feels like a rehearsal for the apocalypse. You close your eyes again, and for a second you wonder, what if the sun doesn't come back? What if this is it? What if the wolf already won? You shake it off. Probably just the darkness talking. But the funny thing is, even in all this gloom, there's a kind of rhythm forming. The people around you adapt. Someone sings softly while fixing a boot. Another sharpens a blade while two children play with carved bone figures on the dirt floor. A mother braids her daughter's hair by firelight, both of them half asleep but still smiling. No one says much. They don't have to. They're surviving together, drifting together. Eventually you doze again, still uncertain what time it is, or how long you'll sleep, or whether you'll wake up to day or night, or something in between. And somehow that doesn't scare you anymore. Sleep doesn't just come in the longhouse, it sneaks in. One moment you're sitting upright, chewing on a piece of dried meat that might as well be leather. The next, your head is tilting forward, your eyes slipping shut mid-chew. Your jaw slackens. You jolt upright, startled by your own body's betrayal, and find yourself locking eyes with another warrior across the hearth. He gives you a knowing look, eyebrows raised, a half smirk, and then resumes sharpening his axes with the slow, meditative rhythm of someone trying to stay awake too. Welcome to the art of the Viking nap. You're now several weeks into deep winter, and the longhouse is a permanent stew of heat, smoke, noise and exhaustion. Time has dissolved completely. The day is a series of half-waking stretches punctuated by chores, warmth, and moments where your brain simply powers down without warning. There is no such thing as a full night's sleep anymore. What exists instead are drips of sleep. Thin, unpredictable, and scattered like breadcrumbs through your day. And you've started leaning into it. You nap by the fire, on your bench, against a goat, in the corner with the food baskets, standing up once, briefly, until someone yelled at you. The line between being awake and being asleep has become so thin that it almost feels optional. Your body takes what it wants when it wants it. The moment your eyes close and your hands aren't holding anything sharp, that's sleep. Micro-napping isn't just a sign of desperation, it's strategy. Vikings, like most pre-modern people, didn't always operate on a tidy 8-hour sleep schedule. The idea of sleeping in one long, unbroken stretch, what modern science calls monophasic sleep, wasn't the norm. Instead, you get biphasic or even polyphasic sleep patterns, sleeping in chunks throughout the day and night, whenever the opportunity strikes. You're now firmly in that category. Sometimes you wake up after 20 minutes feeling oddly refreshed. Sometimes it's 2 hours and you feel like your soul was briefly evicted from your body. Sometimes your dreams crash right into your waking thoughts and you're not entirely sure if you're still asleep. Last night, or maybe it was this morning, you dreamed that the fire turned into a serpent and curled around the longhouse, hissing softly as it warmed everyone's feet. You woke up to someone pouring water onto the coals and muttering about too much smoke again. You didn't tell anyone about the dream, it didn't feel like one. And now, sitting cross-legged by the hearth, trying to carve a wooden spoon with fingers that barely feel like yours, you find your chin dipping again. You snap upright. The spoon has a gouge through the side where you slipped. You pretend it was intentional and set it aside. Around you, others are doing the same thing. A boy naps against his father's leg. An old woman leans against a beam, eyes closed, her lips moving slightly as if she's whispering to the gods in her dreams. The longhouse has become a rotating carousel of semi-conscious people, catching slivers of rest wherever and whenever they can. It's not just survival. It's a kind of unspoken rhythm. You yawn and stretch, rising to your feet to shake off the fuzz in your brain. You step outside for air, just a few minutes, but even that is enough to reboot your senses. The snow outside glows faintly under a sky that's not quite black, not quite blue. There's no sun, just a paler patch of grey where the light pretends to be. Your breath curls into the air like a thread of smoke and disappears. Fringe fact in incoming. In parts of northern Scandinavia, people believed that sleeping too deeply during winter could open you up to spiritual danger, that in the long darkness, dreams weren't just dreams, they were doorways. Sleepwalkers were watched carefully. People who muttered in their sleep were sometimes marked for night walks, spiritual journeys they couldn't remember but might never fully return from. That's why some sleepers had charms tied around their wrists or ankles, or slept with stones under their pillows to anchor them. You don't have stones, but you still have the small herb pouch the seer gave you. It lives under your fur now. You haven't dared open it. You're afraid the smell might suck you into another vision, or worse, answer questions you're not ready to ask. Back inside, the longhouse is dim again. People have reshuffled. New sleepers have taken your spot. The goats are fully leaned into communal living now. One has its head resting on someone's knee like it owns the place. You step around the sleeping bodies, careful not to kick someone's dagger or head, and find a place near the wall where a shaft of warmth from the fire still reaches. You sit, you breathe, and again your eyes close. You're not even horizontal. You're just slumped forward slightly, arms crossed, head tilted at an angle that would break a weaker neck. But your body doesn't care. It drags you under again, and in that brief nap, maybe a minute, maybe 20, you dream again, and this time it's snow. Endless, perfect snow, but the flakes are falling upward, not down, and the longhouse is upside down. The fire burns on the ceiling. The smoke sinks towards the floor. People float in their sleep, limbs moving slowly like they're swimming through dream water. The wolf appears again, but smaller this time, closer. Its eyes meet yours, and for once it doesn't vanish. You jolt awake. The fire has shifted. Someone's added a log. The room glows a little warmer now. You're upright again, heart pounding, the dream still pressed against your skin like a warm breath. You shake it off gently, cautiously. You're not ready to tell anyone yet, and no one asks, because in this house no one questions a nap, no one mocks the sleepers. They just step around them, offer food if they're awake, a blanket if they're not. Everyone is tired. Everyone is drifting. Sleep isn't an indulgence anymore. It's currency. It's warmth. It's defense against the madness of endless dark. You lie back down, curling close to the fire again, this time on purpose. The stone floor is hard and your fur is still stiff from last night, but you pull it tight and close your eyes, not expecting peace. Just pause. The longhouse breathes, and you breathe with it. You've been here long enough now that no one calls you the outsider anymore, not out loud anyway. They still side-eye you when you sneeze into your sleeve or stare too long at the goats like you're waiting for them to talk, but they've mostly stopped watching you like you're going to die in your sleep. You've lasted through frostbite warnings, goat flatulence, multiple sagas you didn't understand, and an entire week of sleeping next to a man who talks in his dreams about punching Thor in the face. You've earned your spot. Unfortunately, your spot just got downgraded. You don't know why. You didn't do anything wrong, at least not that you know of. One night you were sleeping comfortably-ish near the hearth, practically in the respectable inner circle. The next, your furs had been moved, subtly but unmistakably. Now you're over by the back wall, right next to the woodpile and behind a post that somehow blocks all the warmth and funnels every gust of icy wind directly into your kidneys. Welcome to the hierarchy of sleep. You knew there was a system, you just didn't know it was this obvious. At first glance, the longhouse seems like a big communal pile of fur, meat, and occasional arguments. But the truth is, there's structure here. Invisible lines, a pecking order, a heat-based class system. Where you sleep says everything about who you are. Closer to the hearth, that's where the Jarl and his kin sleep. Or whoever's in charge when the Jarl's away, which is often and usually involves axes. They've got the best furs, the best benches, and the most heat. The fire is their domain. You can hear it in how people lower their voices when speaking near them. Even in sleep, they hold power. Next ring out, warriors, seasoned fighters, not the ones who still swing their swords like they're herding ducks. These folks sleep with their weapons, their boots half on and their hair in elaborate braids that somehow never look messy, even after 3 days of sweat. They keep one eye open, and usually 2 knives under the blanket. They snore like thunder, and somehow still wake instantly when someone shifts a log on the fire. Beyond them, the crafters, the elders, the healers. People are respected for what they do, even if they're not swinging axes around. Their beds are serviceable, their corners quiet. They're close enough to the warmth to stay alive, but far enough away that no one accuses them of privilege. You were there once, briefly. It was nice. Then there's the outer circle. The draft zone. Where you are now. It's not punishment exactly, but it's definitely not a promotion. You share the space with a goat who chews in its sleep and a young man who mutters poetry to his dead brother. The furs are thinner, the fire barely reaches, and the wall behind you weeps with condensation, which drips onto your head at the most inopportune times, like just before sleep or mid-dream when you think the gods are crying on your face. You try not to take it personally. Maybe someone needed your spot. Maybe it's rotational, or maybe it was the snoring. You did wake yourself up the other night. That could have been the final straw. The truth is, Viking sleeping arrangements were less free-for-all and more social map. Archaeologists have noted that the layout of a longhouse often reflected societal status. Families or individuals didn't just claim a corner and sprawl, they were placed. Whether by tradition, respect, or passive-aggressive first shuffling. Even the goats knew where to lie down. The pecking order was everywhere. And here's your quirky historical bonus. Some longhouses even had partitioned sleeping alcoves, small enclosed bunks built into the wall. These were prime real estate, warmer, more private though, sometimes even adorned with carvings or runes for protection. Most of these belonged to the highest-ranking individuals or guests of extreme importance. You've seen exactly one of these in this longhouse and it's not yours. Not unless you plan to sleepwalk into it and risk being disemboweled by someone with an impressive beard. You try to settle in anyway. The draft licks at your neck like a smug ghost. You pull your fur higher, but it's like trying to block wind with a sponge. The straw under your bench is thinner here too, or maybe just older. It smells faintly of onions and regret. You curl into yourself, trying to find warmth from your own knees. The goat shuffles in its sleep and flops against your foot. You don't protest. Sleep is harder out here. Not just because of the cold, but because of the noise. The back of the longhouse is where the snorers migrate, like disgraced kings of thunder. One man snores like a drowning bear. Another has a pattern that includes an ominous whistle on every exhale, like his nose is trying to summon spirits. And worst of all, you're closer to the toilet corner. Okay, that's generous. There's no actual toilet. But when you're snowed in for weeks, and the night is howling and leaving the house isn't an option, you get creative. There's a designated area, vaguely screened by hanging cloth, where chamber pots are lined up like sad sentinels. The smell is faint most days, not tonight. You gag lightly, then inhale a lungful of goat hair to balance it out. Excellent. You lie there, sleepless, fuming in silence. The fire is just out of reach. You can see it flickering against the far wall, illuminating the lucky sleepers who've managed to stay warm. You're not angry exactly, just aware. Aware of how easily comfort can be taken away in this world. One shift in status, one mistake, one bad dream that gets interpreted the wrong way, and suddenly you're on the edge. But here's the thing, you'll survive this too, you always do. Even out here in the cold with your pride slightly bruised and your toes going numb, because you've learned something important. No one stays in one place forever, not in the longhouse, not in the social order. People rise, people fall. The sleeping warrior next to you may be by the hearth tomorrow. The Jarl's favourite cousin may end up here with the goat. And maybe, just maybe, you'll earn your way back to the warmth. Until then, you curl tighter, tuck your head under your cloak, and pretend the goat is a person. It smells better than some of them. The longhouse hums around you. The fire crackles just out of reach. The dripping from the wall slows, and eventually, cold and humbled, you fall asleep. You're sick. Not plague cut sick or last rites sick, but the kind of sick where your bones ache in a way that feels older than you are. And everything tastes like wet wool. It started as a scratch in your throat 2 nights ago, then a cough, then the chills. Now you're bundled so tightly in furs that you look like a fallen pile of laundry, and still you can't get warm. You feel like you're freezing from the inside out, and that's saying something considering how many actual freezing nights you've survived already. No one coddles you. Vikings aren't exactly known for their bedside manner, but you get a glance here, a bowl of broth there. A younger girl, maybe 12, maybe 50, you've stopped trying to guess, presses a warm stone into your hand without saying a word. You nod your thanks, grateful even, for that tiny gesture. The stone radiates just enough heat to make your palms sweat, and for a brief second, you forget how much your teeth hurt. You lie back down on your bench, which feels colder now somehow, and let your body sag into the straw. The goat is gone today, either avoiding your germs or reassigned to someone higher up the draft hierarchy. Your breath rattles a bit in your chest. The coughing comes in short, sharp bursts that leave your ribs aching. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows getting sick in winter is dangerous. Historically, this wasn't just a nuisance. This was a threat. Winter illnesses in the Viking world often spell disaster, not just for the individual, but for the household. When warmth is limited, nutrition is basic, and beds are made of wood and straw, the common cold becomes something closer to a siege. A cough could linger for weeks, a fever could burn someone out in a single night, and there's no doctor waiting with antibiotics. There's hot water, herbal poultices, and, if you're lucky, a prayer. You've seen 2 people taken behind the longhouse since you arrived. Neither came back. No one said it, but everyone knew. One had a fever that made him scream in his sleep. The other simply stopped moving. It's not common, but it's common enough. Now you're lying here, trying not to imagine yourself becoming the next story whispered over the fire. Someone appears at your side, you turn your head, and it's the healer, tall, quiet, eyes the colour of steel, hands like old bark. She carries a bundle of herbs wrapped in linen. Without speaking, she presses a cloth against your forehead, then slips something hot and damp into your hands, a steaming mug of what you assume is tea. It smells like pine and old socks. You drink it anyway. And here's your fringe fact of the night. Viking Age healers used birch bark, yarrow, and angelica root to treat fevers and colds. These plants had antimicrobial properties. Though they didn't know it by name, they knew by experience. The teas were bitter, the stews were strong, and the cures were almost always mixed with superstition. Runes for health were carved onto bone or wood and placed near the sick. Sometimes the sick person would be moved to a different part of the house to trick the spirit of illness into leaving them behind. You're not moved yet, but your seax has been turned blade down on the bench beside you, and someone scratched a spiral into the post above your head. A charm, for healing or for protection, or maybe just so people don't sit on you by accident. Either way, it's strangely comforting. You drift in and out of sleep all day, feverish and fogged. Dreams come fast and strange. You see the wolf again, but now it's pacing in a circle, carving a spiral in the snow with its paw. You try to speak to it, but no words come. Your throat burns. The world turns white. When you wake, your blanket is soaked with sweat. You're hot now, too hot, but the air still feels cold. You peel back the furs and gasp like you've been buried alive. Your skin is slick, your breath shallow. The fire crackles nearby, but even it feels distant, like a memory of heat. You hear someone whispering your name, maybe the seer, maybe your own mind. You lie there, blinking, and think, this is it. This is how I go. On a bench, in a longhouse, in the cold, smelling like smoked goat and old wood. Then the healer returns. She lifts your head and pours something bitter into your mouth. You choke. Sputter, but it clears your throat. You cough, hard, twice, 3 times. The pain is sharp, but your lungs feel lighter. She doesn't speak, just nods once and moves on to the next person. You're not the only one sick tonight. This is winter after all, and winter is greedy. Later, someone places a warm stone at your feet. Another wedge of hot bread is pressed into your hand. No one looks at you directly. No one asks how you feel. They just tend. Quietly, efficiently, with the kind of grim tenderness that says, we've all been here. And slowly, you begin to feel, not better exactly, but less worse. You sit up by the fire at some point, wrapped in every layer you own, sipping weak broth and watching the flames flicker. You catch your reflection in a shiny patch of metal. Your face is pale, eyes hollow, hair damp with sweat. You look like someone who's seen too much and not eaten enough. Congratulations. You look like everyone else now. Someone slaps your back, too hard, and grunts in approval. It's one of the warriors, the one who never talks. He doesn't smile, but he nods at you like you've just passed a test you didn't study for. You nod back, because even small gestures mean something here. Especially now. You lie back down, this time closer to the fire. No one moves you. Maybe someone pulled strings. Maybe they're just trying to keep the germs from reaching the goats. Either way, it's warmer. You sleep deeply that night. No dreams, no wolf, just dark and warmth and breath. And in the world of Viking winter, that's a miracle. The sound of the wind changes first. It's not louder. just closer. Less like a distant howl and more like it's standing right outside the door, breathing through the cracks with cold patience. You're awake again, not because someone called you or because of the cough that still lingers in your chest like an unpaid debt, but because your senses have tuned themselves to every flicker of danger in this place. Something's off, not inside, outside. You sit up slowly, fur blanket slipping from your shoulders. Around you, most of the longhouse still sleeps, if it can be called that. The usual symphony of snores and shuffles has dulled. Even the goat seems nervous, eyes open, ears twitching. You hold your breath and listen. There it is again. The soundtrack of a Viking winter night. Wind first, of course, not just wind, but the kind of wind that circles a place like a predator testing the walls. It whistles through the eaves, pushes against the door, rattles the hanging bundles of herbs and bones in the rafters. It's alive, somehow, more like a presence than dealt a pressure. Then come the wolves. One howl, then another. Distant at first, but answered by a third voice much closer. The sound makes your skin crawl in the way only wild predators can manage. It's not the romantic howl of lonely wilderhanses. It's hunger, calculated, and it's not just one animal, it's a pack. You scan the room. Some of the warriors are already awake, quietly strapping on belts and boots, checking weapons. No panic, just motion. Vikings don't spring into action with screaming and fanfare. They flow into readiness like it's a second sleep. You move too, grabbing your sayax and pulling on your cloak. You're not on the front line, obviously. You're still the new one, the recovering sick one, the one who got demoted to the cold corner just last week. But there's no luxury of rank when the walls creak and something snarls beyond them. You become part of the breathing organism that is the longhouse. Someone tosses a log on the fire, sparks leap, and shadows lurch up the wooden posts. For a second it looks like runes dancing on the walls. The seer is already awake, standing in the centre of the house, muttering low and rhythmic words as she burns a small piece of fat-soaked cloth in a bowl. Protection, probably. Maybe prophecy. Who knows at this point? You don't ask, you just sit by the fire, weapon in hand, waiting. The storm outside presses harder. The wood beams creak again. You hear a thud against the far wall. A tree limb, or you exchange glances with the warrior beside you. He tilts his head and listens. Another thud, then silence. You won't sleep tonight. No one will. So instead, you listen. And now you start to really hear the longhouse. Not just its people, not just the storm, but the structure itself. The way the wood groans with age and pressure. The way the packed dirt floor shifts when someone walks. The faint drip of meltwater from the roof beams. Even in this cold, everything has a rhythm. And when you're this tired, this raw, even the smallest sounds become massive. The fire crackles, and it feels like a conversation. A baby breathes unevenly, his tiny exhales syncing with the faint wheeze in your own chest. A woman coughs, a sound so dry and familiar it feels like an echo. You realise how intimate this all is. You've never lived this closely with so many people for so long. Every footstep, every sneeze, every sigh, it's all shared. This is the texture of Viking winter life. No silence, just layers of sound, and sometimes one that doesn't belong. There it is again, a low creak near the door. Not wind, not weight shifting, you're sure of it. You tighten your grip on your sayax. The warrior next to you moves closer to the door, steps silent on the dirt floor. Someone else grabs a shield. A woman pulls her child against her chest and wraps them both in a bear pelt. The longhouse tenses. Then, nothing. Just wind. Just wolves. Just the heartbeat of the fire. And eventually the storm backs off. The wind loses its hunger. The wolves go silent. The longhouse relaxes by degrees. No one says anything, but a few lie down again. A few others take watch. You're not going back to sleep, not for a while. Here's a strange fringe fact to file away. Some Viking communities believe that the house itself could get sick, that too much tension, too much death, too many arguments could corrupt the structure. The walls might rot faster, the roof might leak, the wood might groan more than usual. So they treated their houses with care, offerings at the threshold, carved charms on the beams, songs sung while building. Because in their world, a home wasn't just shelter, it was a spirit. You think about that now, staring into the flickering orange light of the hearth. This place has protected you. It's held your body and your heat and your sleep. It's wrapped itself around you like a giant ribcage, shielding you from wind and snow, and now possibly wolves. You hear the door groan again, just a little. Nothing comes through, but your breath shortens anyway. A voice beside you murmurs, "They won't come in unless the gods allow it." Comforting? Debatable. But it's all you get. Eventually you do lie back down, partially armoured, blade still within reach, fur tucked up to your chin, your bench is cold, your toes are colder. But your body relaxes into that edge of sleep state where the boundary between inside and outside feels thin. Your ears are still alert. Every gust, every rattle, every scrape makes you flinch. You don't dream, not tonight, you hover. But the longhouse holds, it creaks, it sighs, it murmurs, and for now that's enough. There's a boy asleep on an axe, not near it, on it. Handle wedged under his shoulder like a pillow, the blade wrapped in cloth and peeking out from under his fur blanket like it's just part of his anatomy now. He can't be more than 12, thin, pale, with hair that looks like it hasn't been washed since summer. He's snoring softly, utterly peaceful, like this axe-shaped mattress is the most luxurious bedding in the 9 realms. You watch him for a moment from your spot by the hearth, bleary-eyed from a bad patch of sleep and still stiff from the cough that refuses to leave. And as strange as it seems, you get it. Because by now you've learned something that no one really explained to you up front. Viking kids are just smaller Vikings. There's no waiting period. No slow integration into adulthood. They start sleeping in the cold near weapons and wolves and wood smoke, long before their voices crack. And they adapt. This particular child, whose name you think might be Eskil or possibly Eelskin, you've misheard things, has spent the entire week sleeping like a professional. You've seen him nod off sitting up mid-task while waiting for stew, and once during a particularly loud saga, always quietly, always confidently, and never, not once, does he seem to care about comfort. You've nearly had a breakdown over a cold draft. He stirs slightly, curling into the axe like it's a favourite stuffed animal. It squeaks against the bench. You assume that's not ideal, but he doesn't wake. You start to realise that Viking children don't just survive the winter, they outlast it. Historically speaking, childhood in Norse culture wasn't some idyllic phase of gentle learning and play. It was training. Children were expected to mimic adult behaviour almost from the moment they could walk. Little boys learned to throw axes before they could tie knots. Little girls practiced weaving, cooking, and managing animals long before puberty. They weren't cosseted, they were hardened. And one of the first things they learned? How to sleep through anything. A crying infant would not have been coddled in the middle of a longhouse night. Too much fuss, and someone would likely shove a cloth into your hand and say, "Deal with it." That's not cruelty, it's survival. Every member of the household had a role, even the youngest. That meant getting rest whenever and wherever you could. You lie back down slowly, glancing around at the other sleepers. Sure enough, another child, a girl, no older than 8, is curled at the foot of her mother's bench, pressed against a fur-cloaked dog. She's practically upside down, feet sticking out at an angle, one boot missing, dead to the world. You've seen this all winter, kids napping under tables, on piles of firewood in corners of the goat pen. Once, you found one fast asleep sitting on an overturned bucket, spoon still in hand. It's a kind of superpower. You suspect it comes from a combination of exhaustion, flexible bones, and total lack of concern for neck alignment. And then there's you, fully grown, formally modern, occasionally dramatic, still waking up 6 times a night. It is because your shoulder itches or your foot's cold. To be fair, you've made progress. You don't panic anymore when your face freezes. You've learned how to trap warm air inside your layers. You've mastered the trick of tucking your hands between your thighs to warm them up in the middle of the night. And you've finally stopped waking up convinced the goats are standing on your chest. Only once was that true. But compared to these children, amateursville, it's humbling, honestly. You always imagined Vikings as larger-than-life warriors crashing into battle with horned helmets and battle cries. But the real strength starts early, with children learning to sleep in noise, cold and chaos, to wake up and haul firewood, skin fish, or defend the chickens from a fox, all before breakfast. You remember a story someone told at the hearth a few nights back, about a boy who once fell asleep during a sea crossing. He didn't wake up until the ship was docked and the rest of the crew had unloaded every barrel. When someone finally poked him, he looked up, shrugged, and asked if the raid had gone well. They called him Stone Eyes after that, apparently. Whether it was true didn't matter. It was believed. That's how childhood worked here. Half fact, half saga. Your own saga right now involves trying to get back to sleep before the draft from the fire dies down. You're closer to the flames again tonight, thanks to your illness and possibly the healer's quiet influence. You wrap the furs tighter around you, trying to mimic the kid's pose, one arm under your head, one leg crooked to preserve body heat, weapon within reach. It's awkward at first. You're too tall, your shoulder protests, your wrist gets trapped under the weight of your own head. You readjust, exhale sharply, then close your eyes. And for a moment you actually doze off. Only for a few minutes, maybe 10, but when you open your eyes again, the fire has shifted. Someone nearby is breathing deeply in the way that this says they're finally resting, and you notice that the boy with the axe is gone. You sit up, he's not far, just over by the woodpile now, curled against a sack of straw. Still asleep, still wrapped around that same axe like it's part of him. You wonder if anyone even moved him, or if he just sleepwalked there and forgot to wake up. You settle again, this time feeling oddly comforted by their presence. These children who've already learned to endure so much. They remind you that the body can adapt, that people are stronger than they look, that you too might one day sleep on an axe handle without waking up screaming. Maybe. For now, you listen to the familiar sounds of the longhouse. The crackle of the fire, the shifting of fur, the occasional snore, the wind softened for the night, no wolves. No groaning rafters, just breathing. So you breathe with them, and you let the sleep come gently this time. You're handed a horn, a drinking horn, curved and polished, filled almost to the brim with something golden and steaming. It smells like fermented apples and despair. Drink, the man says, just that. No smile, no explanation. He walks off before you can ask anything reasonable like what's in it, or will I wake up in a ditch? But you're cold, your bones still ache. And frankly, you'd drink melted boot leather at this point if it helped you sleep. So like every wise decision you've made in this longhouse, you tip your head back and hope for the best. The mead hits you like a small friendly avalanche. It's warm and strong and somehow both sweet and bitter, like honey mixed with wood smoke and old secrets. Your chest floods with heat. Your sinuses clear. You feel your shoulders drop for the first time in hours. The warmth spreads outward, curling into your fingers, your toes, your ears. You exhale, and it comes out as a satisfied groan, which earns you a nod of approval from a nearby elder who clearly respects your inability to pace yourself. Now comes the real question. Will this help you sleep, or crack your mind open like an egg? Because welcome to the ancient Viking tradition of drinking before bed. It turns out our hardy Norse ancestors didn't always approach sleep with the calm precision of a bedtime routine. Sometimes they had help, fermented help, whether it was mead, ale or beer, often made in-house and varying wildly in strength and flavour. Alcohol was a part of daily life. Low-alcohol beer was consumed like water, but stronger stuff? That was reserved for moments like this, cold nights, heavy meals and a body too restless to rest. You stretch out near the fire, still clutching the horn, your head already buzzing pleasantly. It's not quite a drunkenness, not yet. More like the sense that your limbs are humming in a slightly different frequency. You shift on your bench. It feels softer. The air feels warmer. Even the straw smells less awful. Around you others are doing the same, sipping, settling. A few are laughing softly, actual laughter, rare and precious in these winter weeks. Someone's humming a tune that's older than language. Another slaps a companion on the back hard enough to dislodge a memory. You smile. For a moment, the longhouse feels like a home, not just a survival bunker. Then someone starts telling a story. You've learned that storytelling here isn't an event, it's an emergence. A slow-growing thing that begins with a single voice and then pulls others in like gravity. This one starts with a man talking about his dream. Of course it's a dream. Dreams here mean something, especially when they happen after mead. He says he dreamed of 2 moons hanging low in the sky, both dripping blood. He says he saw a ship made of bones. He says he saw a face in the fire and it was his own. People nod. No one laughs. No one questions. They just listen. Because dreams, especially post-mead, winter-born dreams, are sacred territory. You've had your own, of course. They have been getting weirder. Last night, you dreamt you were buried in snow but didn't feel cold. Instead, the snow was whispering to you, telling you things. You don't remember what. Just that you listened. You haven't told anyone yet. Maybe tonight. The horn is empty now. You set it to go down and lie back, letting your head rest against the wooden slats. The fire crackles beside you. The warmth in your chest has spread into your face, your hands, your thoughts. Everything is soft, everything is glowing. You're not drunk, you're dream-ready. And that's something scholars still debate, whether Vikings intentionally drank to dream. There are hints in sagas and folklore that certain rituals, drinking, chanting, even specific herbs, were used to encourage visions, not just to rest, but to open a door. Mead was said to carry messages from the gods, especially if consumed during specific festivals or on sacred nights. Some even believed that drinking before bed allowed the soul to travel more freely during sleep, untethered by worry or wakefulness. And here's your fringe detail of the night. There were seers, Drotin, who claimed they could brew dream-enhancing drinks, mead infused with mugwort, or sometimes fly agaric mushrooms, yes, the red ones with the white spots. Hallucinogenic bedtime tea, essentially. You're 80% sure you haven't had that kind of mead tonight, but you never asked. You start to drift. The fire flickers in your peripheral vision. Shadows shift on the rafters, someone nearby begins to snore, deep and guttural and somehow melodic. Your eyes close slowly like shutters drawn against a warm wind. But before you fully fall, you feel it again. The wolf. Not in your dream this time, but behind your eyes. Waiting. Watching. You don't see it, but you know it's there, pacing the edge of your consciousness, like it's been invited in and is still deciding whether to come closer. You inhale. Slow and shallow, then finally sleep takes you. And this time it's different. You're not lying in the longhouse anymore. You're in a forest. Midnight blue snow underfoot, stars spinning above like they've come loose from the sky. You're walking, but your feet don't leave prints. The trees bend toward you as you pass. The air whispers your name, not harshly, not kindly, just curious. Then the wolf steps into view. Same eyes, same ashish grey fur, only now it speaks. No mouth movement, no growl. Just a voice echoing in your chest. You're learning, it says. You blink. Next time, follow. And just like that, you wake up. The fire's low. The longhouse is quiet. The horn is still by your bench. A drop of golden liquid pooled in the bottom. Your head's clear. Your heart's racing. You lie back down, unsure if you actually slept. But one thing's certain. You'll be drinking again tomorrow. You never meant to stay awake for 3 days. It just happened. First it was the mead dream, then it was the wolf, then it was the unsettling feeling that your dreams might be less dream and more summons. Then the blizzard came back, not as loud this time, but heavier. The kind of cold that creeps under doors even when they're barred, even when the fire's been roaring all day. You tried to sleep, truly. You lay down, you closed your eyes, you listened to the wind sing through the eaves like a dying flute. But sleep didn't come. Instead, you got a headache and the unsettling conviction that someone had just whispered your name. So when the festival was announced, your reaction was not one of joy, it was suspicion. Celebrations mean music, noise, fire, no sleep. And the gods, because of course this was their idea, have decided now is the perfect time to party like Ragnarok's been cancelled. Midwinter festival, 12 hours of lightless revelry. You don't even know what day it is anymore. But the longhouse suddenly transforms from groaning survival chamber to full-blown feast hall. People start singing, laughing, drinking more than usual. Someone brings out a drum made of animal hide and proceeds to beat it like it owes them money. A few warriors strip down to the waist and wrestle near the fire just to prove that their muscles are still functional, so you're not ready for any of this. You sit slumped in your usual spot, eyes sunken, skin pale, heart buzzing like a broken bell. Someone hands you food, some sort of baked flatbread with dried berries in it, and you eat it because your body's given up on protesting. Another person offers you mead. You shake your head. They laugh and hand it to you anyway. You drink it. Of course you do. Here's the thing no one tells you about Viking festivals. They are not optional. Everyone participates. Even if you're boy, even if you're exhausted, even if you're reasonably certain the walls are breathing and your socks are plotting against you. To skip a feast would be an insult to the gods, and you've already dodged a few too many rituals for anyone's comfort. You join the circle. You pretend to laugh. You bang your hands on the table in time with the drum. Someone tosses a string of beads onto your lap. You wear it. It smells like bear fur and old sweat. You don't ask questions. Midwinter festivals were serious as business in the Norse calendar. Known by different names across different regions, Jol, Midvinterblot, or simply the Dark Feast, these celebrations were both a reward and a challenge. a reward for making it this far into the cold and a challenge to the spirits of winter to back off just for a bit. Sacrifices were made, usually animal, sometimes symbolic, and fires burned all night to keep the darkness at bay, and most importantly, no one slept. Because this wasn't just a party. This was defiance. You feel it somewhere deep in your bones as the night stretches on and the music intensifies. This is a house that has suffered. Fevers, storms, frozen toes and cracked rafters. But tonight there's laughter. There's meat sizzling on a spit. There's dancing that looks more like aggressive stumbling. There's joy, and that's powerful. A woman pulls you to your feet. You don't know her name, but she grins with the energy of a lightning bolt and starts spinning you in a circle so fast you forget which way the fire is. You stumble, laugh, and nearly crash into a bench. Applause erupts. You bow awkwardly and immediately sit back down before you fall over. You're running on fumes now. Your limbs feel light, like they're floating half a second behind your brain. Your thoughts are starting to untether. Someone nearby tells a story about a man who got lost in the snow, only to return 3 days later with antlers and no memory. Everyone laughs. You're not sure if it's a joke. You glance around the longhouse and realise there's something odd. No one is lying down, not a single person. Even the elders are upright, wrapped in furs and sipping from carved wooden cups. The children are chasing each other around the fire pit, howling like tiny wolves. One of the goats is wearing a necklace of pine cones. The line between real and ridiculous has officially dissolved. You close your eyes for just a second and instantly feel a hand on your shoulder. "Don't," a voice warns, not unkindly. "Not tonight." You nod. You sit up straighter. You force your eyes open. The festival isn't over. Here's a fringe fact to keep you upright. Some Viking celebrations involved ritual sleep deprivation, nights where staying awake was seen as a form of spiritual endurance. To sleep was to surrender to the darkness. To stay awake was to claim victory over it. Some even believed that dreams on these nights could be dangerous, that spirits wandered more freely, looking for empty minds to enter. You clutch your mead cup a little tighter. Eventually the music slows, the fire dims, people begin to murmur instead of shout. Someone sings a song in a language you don't know, low and soft, and it hushes the longhouse like a lullaby for grown warriors. You lean against the post behind you and exhale. Maybe now, maybe you can sleep now, but instead of lying down, people begin preparing the fire for the second lighting. More logs, more kindling, more flames, because the fire cannot go out, not tonight. It has to burn until dawn, or at least until someone thinks it's dawn. You realise with horror that this party might actually go on forever, and still no one complains. Because everyone understands the point of this. Winter will not win. The cold takes your crops, it freezes your fingers, it steals your dreams and hollows your bones. But for one night you fight back, with music, with dancing, with meat and drink and stubborn joy. You can barely keep your head up now, but you smile, and finally, when the fire reaches its tallest flame, when the singing reaches its final note, when the goat knocks over a cup and no one cares, people begin to sit, then lean, then sprawl. No one officially announces it's over. The longhouse just slows. The celebration collapses into silence. You lie down in the warmest spot you can find, between two sleeping warriors and a girl who's still humming in her sleep, and pull your fur over your face. You're asleep before you even close your eyes. You wake up to the smell of charred pine, and something burning that's definitely not food. The longhouse is hazy, thick with the after scent of celebration, smoke, sweat, and spilled mead cooked onto the floor. The fire, surprisingly, is still going. A low and stubborn thing. Its embers glowing in a bed of ash like forgotten coals in a dying forge. You're warm, but it's the strange warmth that comes after too much mead, too little sleep, and a night of questionable decisions involving pinecone jewellery and shouting at the rafters. You sit up slowly, the fur blanket falling off your shoulders in a heavy slump. The room is still half asleep. People are scattered like fallen soldiers, curled on benches, slumped against beams, one man wrapped in his own cloak like a burrito with legs. A goat is standing on a stool for no reason at all, chewing solemnly on a scrap of someone's tunic. The festival has passed, but its ghosts linger in the air. You rub your eyes and try to remember how many days it's been since you last slept properly. Real sleep, the kind with silence, The kind without a drum in your ear or someone singing in Old Norse about Thor's unfortunate romance with a tree. Today is about recovery and runes. You notice them first on your bench. Someone carved a small spiral into the wood while you slept. It's fresh, chips of wood still clinging to the groove. You reach out and trace it with your finger. It's not decorative, not casual. This was deliberate. You sit back, blinking, as your still mead-drenched brain catches up. Because of course, after the festival, after a night of fire and feasting, it's tradition to protect the longhouse against what may have entered during the celebration. And that means runes. Sleep runes, protection runes, purification marks, whatever you want to call them. But they're not for show. In Norse belief, the boundary between this world and the unseen grows thin during festivals and solstices. Spirits drift, dreams leak into reality. Good or bad, you never really know what came into the house with the mead, and it's best not to take chances. So when the music fades and the fire settles, the carving begins, you look around and realise they're everywhere. Along the beams, scratched into the ends of the benches, pressed into soot on the hearthstones. Some are familiar shapes, lines and angles. Others are strange, swirling, half-drawn, like the person carving them wasn't entirely awake. You see one near the doorway that looks like a face, not human, too long, too knowing. You're not the only one noticing. The seer is already awake, of course, walking slowly through the house with a bowl of ash in one hand and a charred stick in the other. She draws symbols onto the doors, onto the hands of the sleeping children, onto the goat, who tolerates it with a kind of exhausted resignation. Every motion is smooth, practiced, like she's done it 1,000 times before. Maybe she has. She stops when she reaches you. For a moment she just looks at you, tilting her head like she's trying to hear a sound only she can detect. Then she kneels beside your bench and uses her thumb to smear a dark mark just up above your right eyebrow. You don't flinch. You're too tired, and honestly, you've seen enough weird stuff now that this barely registers. The mark tingles slightly, cool and dry. "Dreamwalker?" she says softly, almost to herself. "Still not finished." And then she stands and moves on. You lie back down, staring at the beams overhead, the way the firelight plays across the new carvings. Something about the longhouse feels different now, not cleansed exactly, but aware, watched, held in place. Here's your scholarly debate of the night. Were Norse runes used purely as language, or did they hold real mystical power? Some say they were simply letters, tools of record. Others insist they were closer to sigils, each shape a gateway or spell, especially when carved with intent. There are references to runes being carved onto the weapons, into tree bark, even into fingernails in more arcane practices. One myth tells of Odin hanging from the world tree for 9 nights, pierced by a spear just to learn the secrets of the runes. 9 nights. You've barely survived 3 of poor sleep and half-baked dreams, and you already feel like you've aged 20 years. But something's shifted in you. You feel it in your chest. What's it? A subtle weight. Like a stone pressed into your sternum. Your dreams have been growing bolder. The wolf has come more often now, with eyes that follow you even after waking. The herbs in your pouch, the ones the seer gave you, now smell stronger, like the scent has ripened. You haven't opened it. Not yet. You're still not sure you want to know what's inside, but you start to get the sense that all this, the runes, the dreams, the wolf, it's not just folklore. It's your path now, whether you asked for it or not. A warrior sits beside you, bleary-eyed and grunting as he stretches his shoulders. He sees you staring at the carvings and grins. "Dreams got you too?" he asks, voice rough from smoke and mead. You nod. He shrugs, takes a sip from a water skin and mutters, "Better than being ignored." Then he lies down again and is snoring within seconds. You stay sitting, feeling the edges of the longhouse come back into focus. The way the rafters arch like ribs above you, the way the carved runes catch the firelight, glowing just slightly brighter than the wood around them. The mark above your eyebrow tingles again. You close your eyes. And this time, when you fall asleep, you don't fight it. You step into it. You dream the longhouse is upside down. Not falling, not broken, just flipped. Rafters sunk into the earth like roots. Fire hanging above like a sun nailed to the sky. The people sleep on the ceiling beams, wrapped in fur and straw, swaying gently like cocooned bats. No one seems to mind. It's just the way things are. You walk among them, barefoot on the underside of the floorboards, trying not to fall up. The wolf is here again. waiting in the doorway, or what used to be the doorway, now a kind of jagged hole floating in the middle of the air. It's crouched, not aggressive, just expectant, as if you're late, as if it's been watching you wander through your dreams, waiting for you to wake up within them. You don't speak, it doesn't speak, you just walk toward it. The longhouse tilts around you, slowly righting itself. The fire lowers. The sleeping figures slide down into the place, landing gently back on benches and furs. And then you step out the door, except you don't feel it. No cold, no snow, just space, a forest, but not one you've seen before. The trees glow faintly at their roots. The snow is black. The stars pulse overhead in clusters that don't belong to your sky. You think for a moment that you've crossed some line in the map, fallen off the edge of the known world. But the wolf keeps walking, and so you follow. You don't know how long you're gone. In the dream, time folds. You see memories that aren't yours. Battles under green skies. A woman singing to a fire that breathes like a living thing. A spear buried in the ice with runes carved so deep the metal bleeds light. The wolf leads you to each of them, then moves on, never explaining, just showing, teaching, testing. Then, in one instant, everything goes dark, and you wake up gasping. The longhouse is still, the fire is low, your mouth is dry, and your chest aches. It's still night or early morning. There's no way to tell, but you're soaked in sweat, your fur twisted around your legs, and your hands clenched into fists. One of your fingers is bleeding, just a little. You don't know how. A splinter, maybe. You sit up slowly, heart pounding, and wipe your face on your sleeve. Across the room, a warrior stirs in his sleep, mumbling something about a sea serpent and a sheep. The goat snorts once, rolls over, and promptly farts. The world hasn't changed, but you have. You rise, moving like someone halfway between sleep and ritual, and step toward the fire. The ashes shift under your feet. You crouch by the embers and stare into them, not expecting answers, just trying to find the shape of what's now inside you. The seer is there, of course, sitting in the shadows like she's been waiting for you since the dream began. She doesn't look surprised to see you. She nods once, her eyes reflecting the firelight like animal glass. You went deeper, she says, not asking. Stating. You nod. What did you see? You open your mouth to answer, and realise you don't have words for it. None that make sense. You saw something beneath memory, not just your own, but someone else's. Ancestors. Goddards, you're not sure. She seems to understand anyway. You're not the only one, she adds. Midwinter opens more than doors. It opens selves. You stare at the embers. They crackle once, and a tiny spark leaps free, dying mid-air. Here's your historical route for the night. Viking cultures deeply value dreams, not as random images, but as messages from the spirit world. In sagas, dreams often predicted death, victory, or omens. Dream seers, called drama vita, were respected and feared. A single dream could change a chieftain's decision, could redirect a voyage, could begin or end a war, and the boundary between dream and prophecy. Thin, that during deep winter, when the veil between worlds grew weakest, dreams could be used like roads. If you were brave or foolish, you could walk those roads. Not just as visions, but as visits. The old stories call them soul journeys. A part of you leaves. If it's strong, it returns. If not, well, not everyone wakes up. You should be terrified. You're not. You feel calm, exhausted, sure, frayed around the edges, but whole, different, but more somehow, like something heavy has been added to your bones, and yet you walk taller. The seer hands you something, your pouch, the one she gave you long ago and you still haven't opened. You glance at her, eyebrows raised. It's time, she says simply. You hesitate, then untie the string. Inside 3 things, a dried root, black and curled, a small carved bone, etched with a spile matching the one drawn on your bench, and a feather, not bird, not quite, soft greyish blue, with edges that shimmer faintly in the firelight. You don't understand them, not yet, but you feel like one day you will. You return to your bench and lie back down. The fire glows gently nearby, casting long, thin shadows across the ceiling. The others are still asleep, peacefully, mostly. One child is murmuring in their dream, something about a fish that sings. A woman nearby is smiling in her sleep, her hands curled around a leather pouch of dried herbs. The wolf is gone, for now. You pull your furs up and close your eyes again, half expecting another journey. But this time sleep comes soft, untroubled, heavy in the good way. You sink into it without resistance, not fleeing the dark, but carrying it with you. You wake to light. Not firelight, not candle glow or the dull orange pulse of embers. Real light, pale and hesitant and stretching across the floorboards like it's not quite sure it's welcome. It slants through the crack in the door, a narrow shaft of weak gold slicing through the dim of the longhouse like a gift from a god you weren't sure remembered your name. You blink at it. Everyone else is still asleep. The fire's down to a lazy heap of coals. The snoring has mellowed into a low ambient hum. Even the goat seems to be taking a break from its usual chaos, curled peacefully near a pile of kindling. But that light, it shouldn't be here yet. You rise slowly, joints popping, muscles protesting like overused leather straps, and make your way toward it. The door creaks as you push it open. Outside is a world you'd almost forgotten existed. The snow is still there, of course, piled deep and soft and glowing with a delicate sheen. But the sky is blue. Not grey, not iron, not black, but a real, almost childlike blue, washed thin by cold and light, but unmistakably alive. And overhead, a pale yellow disk, faint, veiled by wisps of frost mist, but undeniably the sun. You just stare at it. You don't cry, not quite, but something in you loosens. Something deep and coiled and tight in your chest finally lets go. The sun hasn't returned, not fully, but it's making the effort. It's trying, and that's enough. Behind you the longhouse stirs, not because of the light, but because of you. Your movement, the change in the air, you hear it ripple through the room. A shift in breathing, a flutter of blankets, a muttered curse as someone sits up too fast. Then footsteps. Someone else joins you at the doorway, then another, then 3 more. Before long, there's a small crowd of sleep-puffed warriors and children and elders standing in the entrance like a half-dressed congregation, all staring at the sky in silence. No one says anything. Not at first. Then a woman behind you mutters, "She came back." You don't ask who she means. You know, the sun. In Norse mythology, Sol, the sun goddess, rides a chariot drawn by fire-breathing horses, chased across the sky by the wolf-skjold. Every day, he hunts her. Every winter, he almost catches her, but not this time, not yet. Someone starts humming, low, wordless, a tone of gratitude that's too old to name, a song that might have once been an offering. The sound spreads through the doorway, through the crowd, through you. It feels less like a celebration and more like a relief, like a promise fulfilled. Because in the darkest parts of winter, you don't believe in warmth. You remember it, like a dream. You hope it comes back, but you never expect it. And now, here it is, just a sliver, just a breath, but real. The longhouse responds accordingly. Blankets are pulled down from windows, straw is swept aside, wet clothes are laid out on benches to soak in the light. The seer opens every single pouch of herbs she owns and lays them out like a ritual, muttering something about charging them while the sun lasts. Even the crankiest elder manages to smile through cracked lips and a missing tooth. You'd think this brief sunlight would make people rest more, sleep deeper, relax. It does the opposite. Today becomes a frenzy of motion. Everyone's up, everyone's doing. After weeks, months of slow survival, the sunlight acts like a stimulant. Boots are repaired, swords polished, furs beaten clean of dust and dreams. Someone starts rethatching a leak in the roof that hasn't been dry since you arrived. A girl starts mending a fishing net even though the nearest open water is still buried under ice. It's not logical, it's instinct. Because this moment is a window, and no one knows when it will slam shut again. Historically, brief sunlight during midwinter was treated like sacred opportunity. In some regions of Scandinavia, families would drag sick members outside to catch sun for even just a minute. Homes were aired, doors thrown open, runes carved into lintels. Even animals were herded into the light, not for warmth, but for cleansing. Sunlight was a medicine, a god, a guest that needed honouring. You find yourself outside by mid-morning, working with 2 others to stack firewood that had been buried under snow. Your fingers are stiff, but the light on your back makes it bearable. You're not talking much, none of you are. But the silence is good today, not heavy like before, just focused. You pause at one point, holding a log under your arm, and look up at the sky. The sun's already fading, shifting behind a veil of mist, dimming slightly as clouds begin their slow creeping return. But it doesn't matter. You saw it. You felt it. That counts. And here's your quirky fact of the day. There's a theory, half folklore, half proto-science, that Vikings used special polished stones called sunstones to detect the sun's position even when it was hidden. These were likely calcite crystals, able to polarize light and show the direction of the sun even in heavy cloud cover. Not just navigational tools, possibly spiritual ones. Because when light is this rare, finding it becomes a kind of magic. By evening, the longhouse smells like smoke and satisfaction. People are tired, but in a different way, a good way. Muscles used, purpose served. It's a kind of calm you haven't felt since before the snow came. Not lazy, just settled. The seer brushes ash across the hearth in a spiral and whispers, something you don't catch. You don't ask. Some rituals are for her alone. You eat a little more than usual tonight. So does everyone. The stew is thicker, richer. Someone even broke into a jar of pickled apples that had been buried beneath the floor. There's laughter again. Real, belly-deep laughter that doesn't feel borrowed from survival. And when you lie down to sleep, you feel a kind of fullness you didn't realize you were missing. Not food, not warmth, hope. You close your eyes, and for once you don't wait for the wolf. You wait for the light. You sleep so deeply that when you wake, you forget where you are. For a moment, you think you're back in your old bed, in that other life, in that other world. There's a split second when your brain doesn't register the scratch of straw under your back, the weight of fur on your chest, or the faint snore of the warrior 2 benches down who sounds like a dying walrus. But then you roll over, and your elbow slams into wood, and a bit of soot falls from the ceiling and lands on your face. And, yes, the longhouse, still here, still cold, but a manageable cold now. Familiar cold. The kind that lives in your bones like an old friend with bad jokes and rough hugs. And as you sit up, rubbing sleep from your eyes, you realise something else. The cough is finally gone. Your lungs are still sore, sure. You've still got that tightness when you breathe too deep, but the hacking, the waking in the night, gasping for air, the awful taste of smoke and sickness crawling up your throat, that's all faded. Your body is healing, slowly, like everything else in winter, but healing nonetheless. You're not alone in your recovery. Around you, others are stretching, groaning, waking from dreams they won't remember, but will still shape the way they walk today. The fire's already been stoked, probably by someone older and more responsible than you, and the smell of morning broth wafts through the air, thick with roots and whatever dried meat they had left in the jar. It smells like another day survived. You've lost count of them, honestly. You know it's still deep winter, maybe mid-February now, or whatever the Vikings called it. Some calendars mark this as the time of Goa, the final stubborn gasp of winter before the slow inhale of spring. But there's no true sense of time here, not in the modern sense. The days blend together like smoke trails in wind. And maybe that's the point. You stretch and roll your shoulders, surprised at how stiff you are, not just from the cold but from use. The kind of aches you get when your body has actually done something, hauled wood, scrubbed furs, patched a leaking roof with moss and a prayer. You're no longer just an observer in this place, you've become part of the rhythm, a cog in the ancient machine. Someone tosses a boot at your feet. You look up and see the younger boy, Eskil or Eelskin, still unclear, grinning at you with half his teeth missing. "You promised to help with the sled today, Bo," he says, already pulling on his own boots. "Unless you're still soft." You smirk, because apparently you've also gained a reputation for sarcasm and partial reliability. So you eat a little, drink something warm that tastes like fermented cabbage, and might be, and head out with the others. Today's task, dragging heavy things across snow and ice. You help load the sled with logs and buckets of thawed water and a bag of grain that smells like it's been through 3 wars. Then, side by side with 2 grunting warriors and the boy who never shuts up, you begin the slow, grueling drag through the snowpack. It's surprisingly loud out here. Not because of people, no one talks once the work starts, but because of the snow itself. It squeaks under your boots, cracks under the sled runners. The air feels dense, like you're walking through sound. You don't get the stillness you expect from the wilderness. You get texture, layers of frost and breath, and the distant call of crows. You pause halfway through the hall to catch your breath. The sled is stuck in a rut. The grain sack has torn slightly, and the boy is now dramatically pretending he has frostbite and will soon perish nobly. "Just leave me here," he says, flopping backward into a snowbank. "Tell my story." You flick snow at him with your boot. "I'll tell them you died whimpering." He sits up, grinning. "Good. That'll make it more dramatic." Here's your offbeat fact of the day. Some Norse communities had snow games designed around the harsh weather. Competitive sledding, snow wrestling, and mock duels. Children were encouraged to play outside in brutal conditions, partly for fun, mostly for hardening. Laughter and suffering weren't mutually exclusive in Viking childhood. In fact, they often came bundled together like bad stew and old jokes. You finally get the sled moving again, and by the time you return to the longhouse, your hands are raw, your legs burn, and your face is flushed with more than just cold. You feel alive. There's something healing about the labour, something clean. You return inside not as a husk of exhaustion, but as someone whose body finally remembers what it's supposed to do. Move, sweat, strain and recover. Back inside, the longhouse is warmer than usual. The fire's been built higher. The windows unshuttered to let in as much light as the pale sky will offer. People are cooking again, something thicker than broth this time. Actual meat stew. You don't ask what kind. You've learnt that's not a productive question. You sit by the hearth, furs draped around your shoulders, muscles humming with fatigue. And you realise something strange. You don't want to sleep. Not out of anxiety. Not from overstimulation or drafts or dreams or wolves. You're just not tired. Your body is sore, your brain pleasantly slow, and your stomach full. But you feel good. Rested, alert in the way people only are when their sleep is deep and dreamless. You lean back, watching smoke curl toward the rafters, and listen. There's conversation now. Laughter, the clink of bowls, the sound of someone tuning a small harp in the corner, with all the focus of a man sharpening a blade. There's no fear in the longhouse tonight, no edge, just life. And you realise, winter is no longer the enemy. It's still hard, still cold, still one long breath held between dusk and dawn, but it's not pressing down on you anymore. It's around you. You've adapted, grown calloused where you used to be soft, learned to sleep in the noise, to wake in the cold, to find comfort in discomfort. You lie down eventually, not because you need to escape, but because you're ready. You settle into your bench, adjust your furs just so, and close your eyes without fear. And in the quiet, just before sleep takes you, you hear a sound. A distant howl. Not threatening, not close. Just a reminder. The wolf is still out there, and now you're ready. You dream of the sea, not the icy, choppy waves of northern winter, but something older, deeper. Black water under a silver sky, so calm it reflects everything above it perfectly, until you can't tell where the world ends and the water begins. You're standing in a longship, alone. There are no oars, no sail, no crew, just you. Barefoot on the planks, the worn grain of the wood warm under your feet. The air is silent. Not quiet. Silent. As if sound has been folded up and packed away for later. Then behind you a ripple. You turn. The wolf is standing at the back of the boat. It doesn't growl, doesn't blink. Its eyes glow faintly like coals banked for the night. Then it walks forward, each paw step impossibly light, until it's directly in front of you. Close enough to touch, but you don't. Instead, it leans forward and gently presses its forehead to yours, and everything falls away. You wake up gasping. It's the middle of the night again, or early morning, judging by the faint bluish light bleeding through the slats. But something's different. You're different. You feel it the way people feel pressure before a storm. Something inside you has shifted. You sit up and touch your face, half expecting to find fur or salt, or a rune burned into your skin, but there's nothing, just warmth. Lingering, steady, not from the fire, from you. The longhouse is quiet. Still. People sleep soundly, their breath rising in little plumes. The fire's burned low, but not out. You can still feel its heartbeat, and then you notice it. You're not cold, not even a little. Your breath doesn't catch in the air, your fingers aren't stiff, there's no shiver under your skin. For the first time since this journey began, you're fully warm. You stand up slowly, furs sliding from your shoulders, and step barefoot onto the floor. It should be icy, but it's not, just solid, comforting. Like the longhouse is no longer resisting you, but holding you, accepting you. You move toward the centre, toward the hearth. You don't know why, you just do. And that's when you see it. In the ash, drawn by someone or something, is a set of tracks. Paw prints, wolf, not large, not dramatic, just faint imprints in the ash, crossing from one side of the fire to the other. You look down at them, and for a moment your breath catches. They weren't here before. You would have seen, felt, someone would have. You look around, no one stirs. Then you notice the pouch again, the one the seer gave you. It's sitting beside the hearth now. Not where you left it open, the feather is gone, you kneel. Something in you says not to speak, not to break the silence. So you don't. You just touch the edge of one of the paw prints and press your hand into the ash nearby. It's warm. Here's your historical hook for tonight. In Norse tradition, it wasn't uncommon to see animal spirits as guides. Not just omens, but companions. Entities that crossed into dreams, visions, and waking life to mark a person's path. Sometimes they were guardians, sometimes messengers. Occasionally they were versions of the self. Fylgjur, the soul's mirror. The animal that walked beside you from birth to death, seen only in sleep or moments of high magic. You wonder now if that's what the wolf is. You return to your bench eventually, but you don't lie down. You sit with your back against the post watching the fire, thinking. Outside the wind howls again. But it sounds different now, like it's singing. Not calling, not chasing, just moving. You let it lull you. Let the rhythm of sleep take you again. And when you close your eyes, you're back in the longship. Only this time it's full. Not with people, not with noise, but with presence. Runes carved into the railing, furs piled near the bow, a lantern burning low on the mast. And you? You're rowing, no wind, no waves, just stillness and motion, impossibly coexisting. You don't ask where you're going. You already know. You're headed for the mountain, the one you saw in your second dream, the one so tall it pierced the moon. You never thought you'd return to it, but here it is again. Rising in the distance, cloaked in clouds, you don't question how you're rowing across sky-coloured water toward a peak made of smoke and memory. That's not how this works. You've accepted the rules of this world now. The wolf walks beside you again, no longer leading, now walking with you, a companion. You wake again later, this time, with your head on your knees and your hands folded in your lap. The longhouse is coming back to life around you. Fire being fed, people stretching, the usual coughs, grumbles and muttered complaints about goats. And you feel ready for what, you don't know, but the fear's gone. The cold isn't hunting you anymore. It's part of the world you've learned to inhabit. A chapter, not a curse. You stand. The others nod at you like you've always been here. Like you're one of them. And maybe you are. For now, it begins with a crow. Not the usual morning call, a scratchy crayak from the rafters, or a lazy flap of wings above the tree line, but a single note, sharp and deliberate, cutting through the longhouse like a blade through snow. You hear it before you open your eyes. It's close. Too close. When you finally sit up, the crow is sitting directly in the open doorway, just sitting there, watching. Its feathers glisten wet and black as pitch. It tilts its head once, slowly, and lets out another caw. Not loud, not panicked, just a punctuation mark, a full stop, an announcement. You glance around. A few others have heard it too. The boy, Eskil, definitely Eskil now, is already squinting at the bird like it owes him an apology. The seer, sitting near the hearth, nods once and mutters, "That'll be the one." Then she rises and starts packing herbs into her satchel. No one tells you what's happening. They don't have to. You already feel it. Something is ending, and something else is beginning. It's not just the weather, though the air has changed. It's warmer today, subtly. The kind of warmth that doesn't show itself in the sky, but in the earth. In the way the frost breaks easier underfoot. In how the ice on the water bucket near the door isn't solid this morning, but slushy. But that's not all. It's in you too. You move differently now. Slow, yes, but not from fatigue, from certainty. Every action feels deliberate. Every breath carries weight. You've stopped flinching at the cold. You no longer sleep with your knife clutched in your palm. You've grown used to the rhythm of the house and the voices, the creaks, the goats, the smoke, and today, somehow, you know it's time. You roll up your bedding. You help sweep the floors. You eat your stew. You even make one final trip to the woodpile without complaint. No one says, "You're leaving today," but everyone acts like it. The longhouse, once so strange, has become a living thing to you, and that thing is gently nudging you out. There's no ceremony, no feast, no carved horn to send you off. Just nods, handshakes, a piece of dried meat slipped into your hand by a quiet child who never spoke your name but always sat near you at night. The seer stops you before you reach the door. She presses something into your palm, the carved bone from your dream pouch, now strung on the length of leather. Around the spiral rune, someone has etched new marks, tiny scratches you don't recognise, but they hum when you touch them. You look at her. What does it mean? And you ask finally. She shrugs. It means you're not done. Fair enough. You tie it around your neck. As you step outside, the crow lifts off the threshold and glides into the trees. You don't follow it. Not yet. Instead, you turn back one last time. The longhouse stands quiet and solid in the snow, smoke curling from the roof, sunlight spilling across the entrance like a blessing. You remember your first night inside, how impossibly dark it felt, how foreign the cells, how close death seemed, wrapped in every draught. You remember the straw that poked your ribs, the coughing that shook your chest, the wolf, and now you're here, warm and standing and ready. You walk. Not fast, not slow, just forward. The snow isn't as deep as it was weeks ago. The sun still hides, but the light it casts is different now, softer, more honest. You can feel the shift, the turn, the edge of winter, finally showing its back. And here's your final quirky fact of the night. Norse mythology told of a cycle, not an end. Ragnarok wasn't the apocalypse, it was a reset. After the world burned, after the gods fell, after the wolf devoured the sun, the earth would rise again. Green, warm, fertile. 2 humans would survive, hidden in the roots of the world tree, and they would walk into the new dawn together. You wonder now, if that's what you've done, survived a small Ragnarok of your own. You walk past the trees where the wind once howled like death, past the place where you first heard wolves, past the icy stream where you dunked your frozen fingers and thought you'd never last a week. And still you keep walking, not away from something, but towards something else. You don't know where the path leads yet. But you know how to sleep through winter now. You know how to wake in darkness and not be afraid. You know how to hear a wolf's voice and listen. Eventually the wind picks up behind you, gentle, brushing your back like a farewell hand. The sky brightens just a little, and the crow circles overhead once before disappearing beyond the trees. You keep walking, and the world, quiet and wide, walks with you. So here you are, back in bed, your own bed probably, surrounded by familiar shapes and sounds. The hum of an appliance somewhere in the distance, maybe the gentle whirl of a fan or the low purr of traffic far off like an echo from another life. You're warm, safe. The darkness around you isn't threatening, it's restful. And if you listen closely, maybe you can still hear it. That distant howl through pine trees, the soft creak of a timber beam settling overhead, the quiet crackle of a fire no longer needed to keep you alive, just company for your thoughts. You made it through the winter, not just in story, but in spirit. Because let's be honest, this wasn't just about how Viking warriors slept through the coldest nights. It was about how you do, how we all do, or whether it's snowstorms or stress, real wolves or metaphorical ones, we're all learning to wrap ourselves in the tools we have, fur, fire, laughter, maybe a dream or two, and wait for the light to return. You learn to lie still even when the wind sounded hungry. You learn to find warmth in strange places, in a bowl of hot broth, in the press of a shoulder beside yours, in a song half remembered from someone else's childhood. You learn to sleep beside fear and to wake up stronger. You learn that sometimes healing means wrestling your own bones under a frozen roof until they remember what it is to carry you forward. And when the sun returned, you stepped out to meet it, not blinking, not afraid, just ready. So yeah, maybe you didn't survive Ragnarok. Maybe you didn't carve runes into your sword or talk to a wolf in your sleep, but you stayed, you breathed, you waited, you listened, and now the world turns back toward the light. So go ahead, breathe out. Let your body sink just a little deeper into the mattress. Let the dark soften around you. You're not in a longhouse anymore. There's no goat threatening your soup, no child stepping on your face while sleep fighting a dream dragon. Just peace, just quiet. And if the wolf comes to your dreams tonight, tell it you're not scared. Tell it you remember, and tell it thank you for walking with you through the dark.